This is the regular meeting of the Human Services Committee for March 3rd, 2014. We have a quorum. Could we have the approval of the minutes of the February 3rd, 2014 meeting? It's been moved and seconded. Are there any additions, corrections to the minutes? If not, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay. For citizens' comments, we have lots of people signed up, but everyone is signed up either for care or for noise, and so we'll just save them until we get to those items on the agenda. Is that okay with everyone? Okay, thank you. Okay, the first item on our agenda then tonight is the Township of Evanston, and Assessor Wilson, is she here? Okay, if not, then next is an update from our acting township supervisor, Mr. BOBKENCZ.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. It's been a while since we gave you an update on all things Evanston Township, and we thought tonight would be a good opportunity to do that. Avonda Thomas, who, as I know you all know, has been managing our day-to-day operations, is here with a short presentation, and as she's coming up, let me just take this opportunity to thank Avonda for the outstanding work that she's done. Certainly the workings of all townships, all 1,433 townships in the state of Illinois are unique animals, and she was able to take the new responsibility and really run with it. So Avonda, I really want to thank you for your hard work and the good work you've done over the last several months.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair. Thank you for allowing me to present to you some information that I think you'll be very interested in. Again, I'm Avonda Thomas Smith, Director of the Health Department and Interim Director for Township. And I wanted to share with you that we have hired a new Township Case Coordinator to support some of the services that have currently gone on in the Township. And Indira Perkins is here with us tonight. We're glad to have her. She has an extensive background in social work. Her areas of expertise are child welfare, licensing, quality improvement, case management, and youth outreach. So she has a strong case management background, and we're happy to have her. Some other updates in the township other than staffing, I would let you know as serving as your interim director, I've been able to build and restore some past relationships that have been impactful for our clients that we serve. Particularly those relationships have been with the YMCA, which houses many of our clients that we serve, and we've able to do some additional workforce development training that has been absent from the program for a period of time because of staffing. We're also able to build partnerships with Kevin Brown, who you know is the program manager for youth and young adult. We learned very quickly after meeting with his group that many of the individuals that he served were eligible for the General Assistance Program, and some eligible for emergency assistance, and was unaware that the program existed. So out of that one meeting, we were able to receive 26 general assistance clients who are eligible and some have been in the process, and some have actually received financial assistance and grant benefit through the one meeting that we had with his group. Also, I'm really excited to share that since Erie Family Health Center is in our borders, we've partnered with the center director, and I'm excited because we just did all the logistics just today to have a screening event, come meet a doctor event, and to enroll our eligible clients, which is about 80% of our caseload, into health care benefits for the Affordable Care Act. So what that means in a literal sense is that we would probably be looking at $500,000 savings in medical cost and pharmaceutical cost that we're paying right now. So this will happen. We will have the first round of screenings, come meet a doc, come sign up for enroll and get covered on March 16th. Physically at Erie Family Health Center. I thought that it would be best that if family members, clients would actually see how fantastic Erie Family Health Center physically is, and actually to engage with a provider. So on that day, there will be free screenings. We're talking blood pressure screenings, cholesterol screenings, diabetes screenings, depression screenings, et cetera. And we'll get constituents signed up for Affordable Care Act and signed up for county care. Some will meet the deadline of March 31st for Affordable Care Act, but we know we can continue to sign up for county care. And we've been able to reduce the 7-page questionnaire sheet, which is a 20-minute engagement, to 5 questions that will get them started in the process. And so they will leave that day not only with their grant benefits that they're entitled to, but they'll get some free screenings and we'll have health care. And so we're excited about that. The last thing I want to tell you is that Indira and I have gone through visual training, which is a software that's used for the general assistance assessment and financial component of the program, and we have instantly found some opportunities of efficiencies that have occurred immediately that will also incur significant cost savings, particularly with our pharmacy costs. And if you look in your packet, we've already spent about $9,000, $10,000 just in pharmaceutical costs to year to date, which is March 1, and we're thinking that that cost savings would be reduced at least by 60 to 70% once we get them engaged in the discount pharmacy program. And then Indira and I will be traveling to the lovely Effingham, Illinois to receive additional advanced training just to make sure that we're being most efficient and effective through township programming. So I'm excited about that. I'm excited that we have additional supports, and I'm really honored to be serving in this capacity. Any questions?
See any lights, but I would just like to say congratulations and thank you so much. I'm so excited to hear about the health care because
So am
I was so sure that so many of the clients would be eligible, so that turns out to be true.
Thank you. I'm excited too.
Alderman Grover.
Yeah, just that, Madam Chair, that we spend so much from township budget for medical, pharmaceutical expenses. I think our intuition told us that there were significant savings to be had, and it wasn't because of just Affordable Care Act, but because of making sure our clients found their way to Erie or understand the services that they could get there. And yeah, thank you.
Right.
Thank you very much.
Director Thomas Smith, what about the other, I think you said 80%, what about the other 20%? Are there circumstances that, or they just haven't gotten through the process yet?
Actually, they have health care. They have
okay.
confirmed to have a primary care provider.
Okay.
But the 80% is just significant. And I'm excited about the cost savings, but as a nurse, I'm excited about comprehensive care
Right.
for clients who need it, want it, and are eligible for it.
Great, great. Well, again, congratulations and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, the next item on our agenda is the township monthly bills. Is there a motion to pay those bills?
I move approval of the township monthly bills.
It's been moved in second. Are there any additions, comments, questions? If not, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay, moving right along. Our next item for discussion would be the review of the December and January police complaints. And I know I saw the chief somewhere. Oh, there you go. Okay.
I'm just here to field any questions about.
Any questions? Oh, okay, all right. I didn't know if there was a presentation or not. Did anyone have any questions? Any comments?
Again, it's the use of the in-car video
Yes.
that so changes the outcomes, perhaps, in some of these cases, but certainly the posture of the party, the complainant.
Absolutely.
Very effective at really showing what happens.
Right, the one at Haven School was very
And
interesting.
that was, and haven't I seen that at Haven and Kingsley School?
Absolutely.
Oh, my goodness.
Absolutely, that was very interesting. Do we have the cameras in all the cars now, or just about all of them?
Just about all of them.
Just about all of them? Great. It's a wonderful, wonderful tool for us. Okay, well, Could we have, you have something, Judy? No. Could we have a motion to accept the complaints for December and January?
I'm so move.
Second.
It's been moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank
Have a
you.
good night.
You too. Next on the agenda is the Noise Tenant and Art Council Joint Recommendation. This is going to be a presentation from the Tenants Organization and the Arts Council, right? Okay, great.
Sure. We just have to make sure everything's working. Just right there. This one. Double.
Yep.
Okay. Okay. Could we have the lights? And then.
No,
Don't do that? Okay. And do. Yes, I do.
I think what we want is, will it play by itself if we double click?
No, remember, on the lower right-hand side, there's a thing that says play. Lower right, on the bar. Uh-huh. It'll show. Try another one. No?
No. Uh-oh.
That's okay. That's okay. How about-
Present.
Yep.
Okay. I think it's going to go all by itself just in case.
Great. Good evening, Madam Chair and Human Services. Thanks for having us again. My name is Maggie Weiss. I'm the Chair of the Noise Tenants Committee, and I'm here with.
My name is Lisa Delantoni, and I'm the Evanston Arts Council co-chair. Thank you so much for having us.
We're here tonight in response to a request for recommendations and review of some policies and procedures that was asked by this body as well as the city manager, and we've been working on this for over a year. Many of the recommendations are included in the packet that you received last week. Go ahead.
I think we're going to just, okay. So let's-
And of course, everybody here, for the most part, knows we're talking about the Noise Cultural Arts Center at 927 Noise. It's a Daniel Vernon building. It's an incredible structure that's probably going to survive all of us. And we really look forward to bringing all these recommendations and more to fruition.
Some of the areas to focus on in the recommendations are a public reception desk to maximize rental space, increased activity, a marketing and social media campaign, and facility improvements overall.
And we believe the way that we're going to do this is with a community effort. The citizens of Evanston have already come out in great support for some of the things that we've already done just this year, in concert with the Noise Tenants, in concert with the Evanston Arts Council, and of course, the Director of Parks and Recreation and everybody on staff.
And through this collaboration, we believe that together we can develop Noise into a thriving arts and culture center. We can ensure safety and access for tenants, students, residents, and visitors. We can collaborate with community groups and city staff, and we continue to do community service and outreach. Essentially, all of our groups working together can do all of this and more, but we really do feel that these points are the most important.
So already this year, we had a phenomenal event, February 15th, the weekend of Valentine's Day. Many studios were open. Everybody had people coming and going. In addition, 3 of the 4 production companies in the building, Actors Gym, Next Theater, and Piven Theater, all had openings that weekend. And at the open house, there was between 150 and 200 people. It was just a wonderful, wonderful evening. And we look forward to having many more of those. That would not be possible without the help of Martha Logan and everybody at the in the heart of City Hall who shared their printing capabilities and also their promotion capabilities. It was incredible.
The recommendations also mention a city staff presence that would be directed as a point of contact for visitors coming into the building. It would enable us to have increased safety for tenants and exhibits, and also to provide supervision, whether it be of the activities, of the leases, of the building in general.
So we've been advised that it's a stretch, but we really want to emphasize that we think that's crucially important to having a city presence in a city-owned building. I want to stress also that we are asking people, artists from around the country and locally, to put up their artwork where there is no supervision. So, for example, I'm supposed to have a show in May, and I would probably be putting up anywhere from 10 to 20 pieces of artwork, ranging in value from $750 to $3,500. And what is there besides a camera to stop someone from cutting off the supports or the fishing line on which my work hangs and walking away with it? When there is a physical presence in the building, it prevents that. I believe that it's a responsibility of the city in a city-owned building to do that. I'm delighted that it's possible, if it's a part-time person, that the time could be made up with volunteer staff. I believe that works really well here at the Morton Civic Center, but it's also true that if I walk in the front door of the Morton Civic Center, there's many, many rooms filled with people that I can come in and talk to if I can't get what I need and the city desk isn't staffed. So I would like you to please keep that in mind as we move forward.
We believe that through strong civic and volunteer partnerships, we can create a thriving arts and culture center for the city and neighboring communities. Most of these recommendations that we have in the document will help us create that.
Behind these recommendations are many crucial pith points that have to do with how to move forward to keep it a dynamic space. We hope these recommendations, and we believe that they'll lead to Noise becoming a dynamic arts destination, and we would like to do it in concert and collaboration with the city. Thank you so much for your time. And we wonder if anybody has any questions about the recommendations while we're up here.
I have one, Alderman Burrus.
Hi. Have you keep saying the city-owned building, the city should do this, the city should do that. Have you given consideration of the tenants association buying the building and running it?
That was considered 2 years ago prior to the Pittman proposal, and hasn't been reconsidered since then.
Would you consider that? Why hasn't been reconsidered, and would you be willing to put a proposal to the city to buy the building from the city?
Well, my stake in the building is a much smaller percentage compared to the 3 primary tenants who are interested in purchasing the building. So I'm not sure fiscally that's something I could personally afford.
No, I'm saying that the tenants association, you're saying the tenants association will do, this is the presentation from the group, so it's the tenants association.
Has not considered that.
And why has that not considered that?
I would say economic feasibility of taking on that responsibility and paying insurance on a freestanding building of that size.
Okay, so you still want the city to maintain the building and take on all the liability for the building. So, and then you also want the city to hire someone to be a receptionist and
Part-time, non-custodial.
and to be sort of a sheriff, if you will, for the artwork that's from the tenants in the building that don't own the building, but you want that person to be sort of a gatekeeper?
The finances for the building are paid for by the tenants who are currently renting the space, so it is not a space that the tenants just occupy and do not pay to utilize.
No, I'm well aware of that. Thank you very much. But we're asking for more, for the city to pay even more. Have you considered? You're asking for another staff person, another person to police your belongings on the property, correct?
Well, no, it just happens that I have a show. I've been tenant in the building for 10 years, and I've applied other times. It just happens. The reason I brought up the point about exhibits is that there will be people from far and beyond who will have artwork up.
Right, no, so not
it's,
just,
it's a responsibility of having a
What I'm-
city-owned gallery.
When I'm saying you
Noise
being
tenants.
the tenant association, not you specifically, you as a person.
Yes. Yes,
So,
and yes, we were hoping for a part-time staff member in lieu of the 3 or 4 staff members who are no longer in the building who were moved out 2 months ago.
great, yes, which I'm very excited about. Have you considered a volunteer to do that at our front desk? So you could have a volunteer.
Here, but just a physical person to greet incoming. It doesn't have to be.
So your organization, with all your volunteers and all the people in the community work you do, you could actually have a volunteer there at the front desk doing this as well, correct?
I am not in the business of running a volunteer corps, no, and I don't believe the noise tenants are interested in running a volunteer corps. My understanding from discussing this with city staff is that if that were to happen, that would be organized through city staff volunteer corps that's already in place.
So
for
you
this
want,
building.
so you want the city staff to organize a volunteer person to be at the
Yes.
reception at Noise
Yes.
because of the gallery space that your
Yes.
group wants to put up exhibitions in the hallways, and so you want someone from the city to monitor that. I'm just trying to be really clear about what you're
I
asking.
think it's fine. It's
I think
absolutely
we're-
fine with me, but please let me answer, Lisa. It's written in the policy of the building, and it's been readopted at least 10 years ago. Yes, that there's exhibit space. Every single tenant is not in charge of that exhibit space. There's one person assigned with that responsibility. It used to be Chai Curley and Barbara Goldsmith, and now it's solely Barbara Goldsmith. She is in charge of securing visiting artists to exhibit in that space.
And is she a city staff employee, or
She is not, it's volunteer.
She's a volunteer that organizes the gallery space in the hallways, in Noise.
Yes.
But the city takes responsibility for policing what happens in that gallery space.
Yes.
Okay, I just want to be really clear.
No, and I think, and I just really see you really confirming what was really in their request, what they had put in there. Okay, so I think we understand what it is that the tenant organization, I think, is recommending with that, and we will certainly in our deliberations we'll discuss what. And I think we've already said what's possible and what's not possible as we hear from our city staff. But I have a few other, if you don't mind, I have a few other lights. Alderman Grover.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, ladies, very much. I'm not assuming, and thank you for the recommendations from both the groups. I'm not assuming that you got 100% buy-in from every one of the tenants, or maybe not even every member of the Arts Council, but I'm assuming, and correct me if I'm wrong, you got a strong consensus that these are the recommendations supported by the Tenants Association
Yes.
and the Arts Council. So,
Majority.
great, thank you.
And I do think the majority wants a thriving arts and culture center.
Okay.
And that's really at the heart of.
So the common mission, no trouble agreeing on that. It's some of the details that maybe not everyone's bought into, but you do have a good consensus then to support the recommendations from your groups.
Yes,
Great.
and we do believe that all of the recommendations will help create a thriving arts and culture center.
Thank you.
As long as it can be sustainable. Alderman Tindon.
Thank you. Actually, I have a question of the city manager. What other buildings that the city owns and operates as recreation centers do we not have any presence of city staff, city security, key card entrance, limited access? I mean, are there buildings that we do count in our recreation, network of places that people in this community use quite heavily? Are there other buildings that we have absolutely no presence of city staff?
Other than the Evanston Arts Center, which is a city-owned building, which we do not operate. So the other facilities that we have, we are actively operating with programs. So clearly, this facility has always, I think, been a little different. And if I may, Madam Chair, maybe just talk a little bit about the recommendations. First of all, I want to thank both the Arts Council and the tenants. It's been a long, difficult discussion, but I think what you've heard tonight is very much in keeping with what the committee and the council has been looking for. I'd recommend that the committee hold this in committee this evening because we need to operationalize some of these recommendations. And I think one of the issues is the one that's raised regarding making sure that the building is as secure as it possibly can be. We've had a number of discussions about what to do now that the staff that was largely contained in an enclosed office has been moved here to the Civic Center. We've come up with this idea of a desk out in the hallway over the first floor, which I think is generally thought to be a good thing. I think the question just is, how is it staffed? How often is it staffed? What kind of person staffing? Is it a full-time employee, part-time employee, a volunteer? Another piece of this security issue has been cameras, and there are some limited cameras already there. I think as we've been making transitions to doing better security cameras at all of our facilities, it makes sense that we look here at noise. So the staff's recommendation in response to the presentation you've received is to hold it as in committee to allow us to come up with some procedures, and we can talk more about the staffing, volunteer versus part-time versus full-time at that point.
I think it's important not to look at this as an art gallery or a sort of an elitist art workspace, but a recreation facility. Arts are recreation. We've had a number of people come up here and testify that it's changed their lives. It's given them purpose. It has opened up their thinking and in relationships with other people. They've enjoyed the activity. Not everyone plays team sports or other active sports. I think this is a very important thing to understand. I think it is truly recreational for a lot of people in this community and needs to be treated at that same level. Thank you.
And I think, Alderman Tennant, members of the committee, one of the challenges I think that we're still working on is as we take our cultural arts programming and really decentralize it so that we're doing programming throughout the community, not just at Noise, and that has been traditionally the past. So it's still a work in progress. I think you've heard that a little bit from both the Arts Council and the tenants as well. So I'm certainly not closing the door to anything. I think it's just a matter of what makes sense. It's a unique opportunity from a recreation standpoint where this is not being city staff led. And I think one of the things the council has said through the couple of years we've been doing this is we've got these great artists, these great arts organizations. Let's rely on their expertise in this facility, and we'll use city staff throughout the community to provide that. Because you're absolutely right, Alderman Tendem. Our Parks, Recreation, and Community Services Department has a community services focus, which is seniors, which is the arts, which is the Ecology Center, which is our youth and young adult program, all of which is under the careful supervision now of Christina Ferraro. So her job is solely those community services aspects of the Department of Parks, Recreation, and Community Services. So I think you're going to see more and more of what we're doing in that department with that community service focus, which absolutely the arts are part of.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Wally, are you saying basically that you're going to be looking at just the procedural, how to make these recommendations work? Is staff generally in support of the recommendations?
Yes.
Okay.
I think we've now talked about the issue of the staffing, which I think you've heard the issues there. The only other issue that, and I've mentioned it to the ladies here this evening, is the square footage issues. We just need to make sure that we're all on the same page as we understand what square footage of which parts of the building are included. Is it just the main building? Does it include the theaters? So we need to work through that. I don't see that as a major issue, but it's something we need to now put in some language that we can make operational. Mm-hmm. So that as tenants come to us, current tenants, future tenants, there's a criteria. So we need to transform those recommendations into more operational documents. And so we think we can do that over the course of the next month and come back to you.
Okay. My feeling has always been there needs to be a physical presence there of someone, whether it's a security person or a staff person. It's a very difficult building to find your way around in if you're coming in, and it's actually two polling places in my ward and in the 5th. No? Okay, then it's two polling places, I think. Anyway, when people come to vote, they have a hard time even of getting around. So it's not an easy building. And I really appreciate what Maggie says. I mean, part of the just the physical appearance of the building. And what's so exciting about the building is you walk in and find these wonderful wide hallways with art displayed on them, and it's beautiful and inspiring. And I want to make sure that it's protected because we're asking these artists who are paying rent to be there. We're asking them to put their livelihood basically at risk. So we need to
And
deal
again,
with that.
our challenge is how to best deal with that moving forward.
And I don't think it's with key cards on the front door or something like that. I think what we want to.
And staff doesn't either.
But
Well,
I
we
think
think
that we
it
need
needs
to
to
give
be a
staff a chance to
welcoming
try to work that out. But I think that the other thing is that we have to keep in mind that it's going to have to be able to be sustainable. I have to get back to the dollars and cents of it. And, and that's one of the things that has been my theme since we started this conversation, and I understand that it was unique, and it was, I remember way back when it first started, I believe it was 83, when all of this began, there were different circumstances, and so we have to be able to look at that, but I think we need to have that discussion after we hear from our staff. Alderman Burrs?
Could I just finish what I wanted to say? Unlike the Art Center, that was obviously leasing for $1 a year, everyone here really is paying rent. And
But the rents have to be
paying
able to
aside.
sustain the building, Judy. We need to know that,
Right, but they can't be above what market rents would be in order to
Absolutely, I
sustain the
agree with you.
building.
Well, and I think the question then becomes, when we cover all of the expenses, if this is an additional expense for the building, that then takes away from money for capital improvement.
Absolutely.
And I think that will ultimately be a decision the council will need to make, what's a prudent amount of money to put aside. If we take additional funds for a staff member, and quite honestly, we've tried to get away from staff members who just sit. And I think our challenge is that we're looking for other things this person could do. The staff that we've had there, we've reintegrated in so that we can have a 9-ward arts program versus a 1-facility arts program. And so that's been part of our challenge. We've had a lot of success with volunteers here at the Civic Center. People look at the sign and they read the sign. They still don't know where to go to pay their parking ticket.
But we're not asking.
So having someone do that, but we have a volunteer that's able to do that.
Right, but we're not asking someone to sit. I mean, we're all wired, and there's plenty of stuff for them to do, whether they're sitting at a desk here in the Civic Center or sitting somewhere else. There's no reason for them just to be staring in space. They can be.
And our challenge is to determine what else, since we're, again, trying to have a 9-ward arts program now, what else that position would do. And we're a little bit of a loss at this point. But we will continue to look at it, and we'll come back to you.
Okay, I have a couple of lights, Alderman Burrs and then Alderman Grover.
Hi, Mr. BOBKENZ. As usual, I have a bunch of questions, almost exclusively revolving around money. One, can you share with me if we have any other recreational facilities that the primary area is rented space in the building that we're not holding activities other than noise?
No.
Again, if you discount the Harley Clark Mansion, the answer is no.
Okay, so all of our other spaces, so Robert Crown, Fleetwood, Chandler, no, none of those others are.
Ecology Center.
Ecology Center. We don't rent space out to organizations. We run the programs in those buildings.
That's correct.
Okay, just one, that was number one question. Can you remind me of the activities the city is doing in noise at the moment?
At this particular moment, I don't believe there's any specific activity.
We do have some of the arts cans in there for the remainder of this year that would be looking to move somewhat for next year. I'm sorry, Joe McCray, Deputy City Manager. And then also, obviously, we have the Fleetwood Jourdain Theater that is still located.
Okay, so the Fleetwood.
Which is really treated as a tenant for all intents and purposes.
Okay, so the arts camps in the summer, other than that, there's no other city activities happening in the building?
The Arts Council programs exhibits and is, I think, going to continue to work for more events, but there's no day-to-day.
Okay, so I have two more questions. The gallery space in the hallways, and that's run by the Tenants Association, or is that run by the Arts Council?
It's been collaborative?
It's been collaborative. Some volunteers have taken it over, some tenants association people have taken it over. So it depends on who is willing to devote the time to make that happen. So it's collaborative. It's
Okay.
not one organization.
So then is that space rented as well, the hallway space? No, so it's just given, it's free gallery space.
City, either through the Arts Council or the Parks Department, program it.
Okay. So my final question on this section, the liability for the artwork that's part of the gallery. So what is the liability to the city for the artwork, as Ms. Weiss could go missing? If there's, what is our liability in regard to that? And even if, let's say, we were to spend a lot of money on a receptionist,
Any artist who hangs artwork or organization signs a form that says the city of Evanston will be liable for the loss. It's insurance coverage from the city.
so is that, so then we're giving the space for free for the gallery, and we're also then taking all the liability as well?
Yes. Like many, many arts centers and cities around the country.
So I have real concern with this, and I would like for for Mr. Farrar to look at what we're doing around, so we're taking on a ton of liability, we're not getting compensated for the gallery space. This seems to be, again, financially not necessarily the best thing for us to be doing. If we're going to allow for free space and put up, have the gallery there, I don't understand why we would take the liability as well. So my thoughts.
Okay. Alderman Grover.
Thank you, Alderman Holmes. I move that we accept the recommendations from the Arts Council and the Tenants Association. But as Mr. BOBKENCZ said, that we hold action on the recommendations, that is adoption of them in committee until he has operationalized with the Tenants Association, the Arts Council, those recommendations.
And
So
Alderman-
my motion is simply to accept the recommendations.
Would Alderman Grover think
Accept.
about receiving the recommendation?
Receiving it.
Receiving the recommendations of the Arts Council and Noise Tenants Association.
Okay. Are you still second it?
Yeah, I'll second.
It's been moved in second. Are there any questions? Alderman Brethwaite.
Just a quick question I wanted to follow up to Alderman Burrus's point. Is it copied? Do we have a copy of that letter on file? And can we get a copy? A copy of the
recommendations?
liability letter? That
Oh,
you
no,
have the
that's,
waiver?
that would be in the Department of Parks and Recreation on file.
We'll get it for you.
Okay.
We'll get it.
Thank you.
Okay. All right.
May I make one more observation? There is a very complicated relationship between the rental of the studios and the lease agreements that the tenants sign. So while it would be great if the Noise Tenants Association could knock on doors and tell people they're not fulfilling the details of their lease. For example, we have a 25-hour requirement for every individual to be in their studio 25 hours a week, which is not always followed. So tenants are not interested in policing each other and turning people in to the city, explaining that these people have violated the terms of their lease. So that is the situation in which the vibrancy and dynamic of the building depends upon whether the city staff looks after that and makes sure it happens. I wanted to address your concerns, Alderman Holmes, about sustainability. We are so glad that we have 4 theaters in the building. Some of those theaters, Fleetwood Jourdain is a city theater, so of course they're not charged rent. So that's going to have an effect on the bottom line. But we have been asking for over a year for an official budget. The last budget we saw, we know was over minimum of $100,000. Some years when arts camp's going strong and really great, it's upwards of $200,000. So we have not been able to see that budget yet, even though we know it exists. So I would strongly encourage you to get your hands on the budget from our building. And I thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
If I could, I would just like to point out one quick thing before I step down. Again, my name is Lisa, and I'm with the Evanston Arts Council. So one really important thing that I would like to leave this presentation with is that there is a tremendous amount of volunteer support for what happens in this building. The Noise Tenants Association are volunteers, working artists, working parents, full-time jobs. On top of that, they volunteer. The Evanston Arts Council are all volunteers. Together, we organized a wonderful event with a lot of promotional help from the city of Evanston. I know Jennifer Lasik back there sent some great newsletters, but we had more than 200 people come into this building. Lots of families, lots of children on a freezing cold day when nobody wanted to leave, and we did tons of promotions, and it was a fantastic event. And so there is the opportunity, if we collaborate effectively and positively, there really is the opportunity to make this a 9-ward arts center where everybody, all ages, all demographics can come and enjoy something other than hockey and soccer. Because my kid doesn't play hockey and he doesn't play soccer. He likes to stick glitter on hats, and I'd love to have him have a city-owned rec center that supports interest other than physical sports. So thank you so much for your time tonight.
Before you walk away, you're on the sign-up sheet, but I'm assuming this was why you signed up, was the presentation?
Well, yeah, I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to sign that. I'm sorry.
Okay, not a problem. Thank you very much. Thank you. And then we'll see you back in maybe in April.
And we've just had incredible experience with both Jennifer Lasik, and Christina Ferraro and Joe McCrae. So thank you so much.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, moving on. The next is the extension of the service agreement with Presence Health for the mental health crisis intervention and community service outreach services. And I assume that's going to be Director Thomas Smith. Oh, wait 1 second.
Yes.
It was moved in second, but we had a question, so I didn't say all in favor. This is of the receiving the report. Oh, yeah. All in favor, any opposed? Okay. Nay. All right, so that's 3, 4, 5-1. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair. Again, Yvonne Thomas Smith, Director of Health Department. I just wanted to make you aware of the impact that the impact of the crisis intervention services that we're receiving from Presence Health. To date, they started serving our community the end of March, April of last year, because we had a need for crisis management, crisis intervention for some families that were mental health crisis. And they've worked through the Mental Health Board to give quarterly reports that have kind of shared families now being engaged on a different level. Before, many of our families were calling 911, and our first responders were responding to some families 60 times per month, and some were same families. And since Presence has been connected, we've seen that number decrease significantly. We've seen about anywhere between 13 to 20 families engaged in services that weren't before. And we've also seen, of course, a significant reduction in our what we term the frequent calls that we're getting from families. Many of the referrals are coming from police and fire. Presence has provided both police and fire around the clock, the 3 different shifts training, and they've also deployed part-time social worker interns that actually are physically in our library. And so staff are not having and being responsible to de-escalate certain situations, but they can actually refer them to the social workers where they've walked over to the social workers, or the social workers have been a part of training for staff and training for patients, and just sometimes conversation for patients. And so I convened the internal staff to see how things were going, to get input from the internal staff that are actually making the calls to Presence, making the calls to the crisis hotline, and all of the reports have been glowing. Staff have been very appreciative that crisis intervention has occurred from the staff around the clock. And I, as the department director, had to call Presence during one of our inclement weather events, where I've had to actually call myself and engage the crisis hotline. And everyone has given beyond satisfactory reports. So the initial contract for year 1 was $55,000 to provide this crisis intervention and community outreach. And so so they're asking for an extension of that current contract to take us through December of 2014 in the total of $73,000 and a few extra dollars. So the total 2-year contract, or the extended contract, is the full $128,000. So again, year 1 was $55,000 and year 2 is $73,000, and staff is recommending this extension.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for the update, Director. Unfortunately, the information that I'm looking at, I can't read the breakdowns. Can you give me an idea of the population served last year from page 146?
You mean demographic data?
Yes.
Let me look.
Page 146.
At the bottom of the table on 146, I'm reading that if your organization serves non-Evanston residents, it does not give. You mean the? Oh, I see. The actual numbers for family income, special needs, and new Evanston clients. You're talking about those numbers? And on my copy, it's blacked out as well. I can get you that information, and I can forward that. Sure.
Yes, thank you. It was pretty clear a year ago that this was a gap that we were not filling, that there was a need for these services, a significant gap. How do we get more people to understand and be aware of the services so that, because this is a significant cost, this program is, and I'm wanting more and more people to understand how they can tap into these services.
Sure. I think when we initially started the services, Presence was going through a branding component because of the merger of the hospital system, and so it took some time to actually get a flyer made. But we were doing word of mouth, and so we're trying to educate our residents the availability of these services through ward meetings, some of your newsletters. They have hired a new manager that is going to work on a deeper level of outreach, because right now our focus initially was to educate our first responders, because most of the calls were coming in through 911. And then we had an ask from the library because some of the staff were being approached or being put in situations for de-escalate, decreasing an inappropriate level of engagement from patrons, I'll say. And so the second component was to do education and teaching in that scope, because we were trying to address the need greater. So we're trying to figure out ways to do better outreach. Presence team is doing that as well. They've gotten flyers and cards, and they're trying to be at convened areas to share the information, but we are still learning that people they're not aware of the services. So those crisis cards, we're trying to saturate the community, but a lot of the information is getting around by word of mouth, by trusted gatekeepers who have utilized the service.
For those who are here and don't know what this is our 24/7 crisis hotline that did not exist a year ago.
That's correct.
So, and the number is 708-681-HELP, which is 4357.
Thank you.
Hi, thank you for this report. What I want to say is, last year when we were talking about this, the initial idea was to hire a staff person.
Yes.
And we had a lot of discussion around that and came up with the idea that partnering with a not-for-profit service would give us a better advantage. And I think this is the perfect example of doing this helps us not only give better service to our community, not saying a staff person wouldn't, but one staff person cannot possibly have the expertise this whole Presence Health can. So I thank you for everyone making the call to do this, try this. I think it's obviously been extremely successful, and it's something that we should look at for other services that we're doing in the community. Instead of immediately saying we need to hire someone, why aren't we partnering with the amazing not-for-profits we have in this community? So thank you again for doing that. And then something that you said early on in your presentation, that it's reduced 911 calls and calls to first responders?
It's reduced the kind of crisis intervention calls to 911.
Right. So I think that's an important thing to note, going back to Alderman Grover's comment about cost, what has been the cost savings? I'm not saying that you should have that number off the top of your head, but we need to look at that. When you poke one place, you may be saving cost elsewhere. To send an ambulance and a fire truck out, that's a lot of money, a lot of personnel time.
Right.
Where if we're addressing it in this way, that is definitely saving us some money. So again, thank you so much. This is really outstanding news.
Thank you. And we hope year 2 we should be able to have some cost saving numbers and some cost benefit analysis. Mm-hmm.
All right, thank you. I believe you just might as well stay there, because I think, if I'm not mistaken,
Do we need a motion on this?
to,
Extend
yes.
the contract. Yes.
So
Yes.
I move approval of the amendment to the service provider agreement with President's Behavioral Health for our 24-hour crisis line.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved in second. Are there any additions, corrections? If not, all in favor? Any opposed? Okay.
And Madam Chair, I just wanted to make mention that the president of President's Behavioral Health, Frank Parham, is here with Reiner Humer,
Great.
his right hand.
Great, thank you. Okay, you want to go to the next item, which is
Sure.
the Torrent grant
Just real
expenditures?
quick, the next item is a reimbursement. We are a pass-through for Cook County lead prevention program. We get a notification from the state when we have a child in our community that has lead poisoning. Our inspectors go out and test soil, test paint chips, and find the source case. And when we identify that there is lead in the home, abatement has to be done and remediation is done. The grant allows us to reimburse the contractor that does that. And so this dollar amount is just to reimburse the work that has already been done to prevent further lead poisoning for that child that has experienced lead poisoning. And so I seek your approval for that reimbursement.
Okay. I see no lights. Can we have a motion? You have a question, Alderman Grove?
I did, Madam
Go
Chair,
ahead.
if I may. I had a couple of cases in the neighborhood where it was a private residence, and their kid tested for elevated lead levels, and the physician's a mandated reporter, so bubbled up on the city's radar screen, and they went through the whole lead abatement rehabilitation thing. But this was their own private cost, so they were funding the costs of the remediation to their apartment or to their home. Who qualifies for the Torrance grant in this case?
Sure. There is a criteria that is established, and we vet and assure that that criteria has been met. And as long as we have the grant dollars to support it, we actually pay for the remediation. But the county, Cook County, has to basically give us the okay to do it.
So these are for income qualified families?
Yes.
Or it's an income qualification?
Yes.
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Yes, we do, but I think we just lost. No, we still have 4.
We still have
Okay, it's all right.
I
We still have 4.
move approval of the payment for the lead rehabilitation of property at 1409 Washington Street.
Okay. It's been moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Director Thomas Smith. Good reporting tonight. Good news. Okay, we move on now. We are moving now to, actually on the agenda, it says the report of the subcommittee on operations of the Evanston Animal Shelter and the city affiliation with the care group. Well, if I'm getting to it right now. No, you heard me we had Claire, and she had signed up, so we got her. That's why I wanted to make clear that if she had anything else to add, she could add that. Okay, we have a number of people signed up. And I'm going to take the citizens' comment for this first. I've learned I sometimes try to do the presentations first, and maybe that will help people not have to make the comments, but usually they make the comments anyway, so we'll just go ahead and do the comments and get that over with. You have a question, ma'am?
I would like to question that. I think the members of CARE would like to hear what our leaders have to say before we make our comments. That would be helpful.
Well, we're not going to deliberate, if that's what you mean, so I wouldn't do that anyway. We wouldn't do that anyway. Okay. Okay. We first have signed up Judy Vogt. You're number one. No, you have to come. Only because it's being televised, so for our people at home. Yeah, you're on candy camera.
Hang on 1 second.
I'm going to try to give you each a couple of minutes to speak because I do have 17 people.
I just have one question.
Okay.
I've been a CARE volunteer for 13 years, as well as served on the tabling committee, have done extensive tabling events, and I have been a volunteer in the Friday night evening shift, and I heard on this past Friday night on my shift that the shelter was given 60 days to vacate. My question is, the shelter has been in existence for 25 years at this location. How can you substantiate giving us only 60 days to vacate?
As far as I know, that hasn't happened, hasn't come before council, so
We were told this.
I can't help what you were told. That may be a recommendation in the committee, but certainly that has not been acted upon. That is not true. No,
Okay,
sorry.
Then, okay.
Okay, thank you. David Vogt? Okay, thank you. Then we have Mark Carson, Asher Britterman, I believe it is, and Linda Scott, and I think it's Christian Callis. Those next four people will line up to speak. Great, thank you.
Hello, my name is Mark Carlson. I'm a resident of the 9th Ward, and I'm here this evening to urge you to vote no on the recommendation for the city to abolish its relationship with CARE. I believe that CARE has been treated unfairly over the past several months. In the last subcommittee meeting, the alderman delivered a set of demands to the CARE representatives. If you listen to the audio recording, you can clearly see that they were not interested in dialogue. Clearly, they have not been acting objectively. Please consider, CARE is a 200-plus all-volunteer organization that has placed thousands of animals in homes over the past 25 years. The subcommittee made no consideration or plans for the cat side of the shelter. The cat side, we are able to provide adoptions more than double the rate of the dogs. And there has been absolutely no consideration for the cat side of the shelter in this recommendation. The recommendation you're being asked to vote on is incomplete and short-sighted. CARE does not have the authority to kill any animal. Only the city of Evanston has the final authority to euthanize animals. It is grossly unfair to demonize CARE as a bunch of dog killers. The chief animal warden, who is responsible for giving the order for euthanasia, has not participated in the dog evaluation process. I don't believe she's even been trained. CARE's #1 priority is to place animals in a safe, forever home. They will never knowingly put a dangerous animal into a home or into the community.
You got about 15 more seconds.
Okay. There are recommendations I'd like to make very quickly. Yeah, I do believe we recommend too many dogs for euthanasia. I don't think it's right that a dog should either be judged adoptable or killed. We should work with animal groups, animal rescue groups in the Chicago area. The operating agreement with the city and CARE.
I'm sorry, I don't like doing this, but we've got so many speakers. How many more recommendations do you have?
Two brief ones, very
Go
brief.
ahead, please.
Okay, very brief. We do need to rewrite the operating agreement between the city and CARE, especially regarding dog evaluations and euthanasia policy. The city and CARE must work together to find a new facility for the animal shelter that is adequate for our needs. So please send the subcommittee back to work, and I think we should also replace several of the committee members, both from the city and from CARE. I think we need some new eyes on this problem.
Okay, thank you. Okay, well,
I'd just like to close by saying,
sir, I'm
do we really
so sorry.
want the city to sever the relationship with CARE in such a brutal manner? We need to regain the civility and repair the breach.
I'm just going to say this. I'm not going to say it anymore. I try to be fair to everyone. And I can't do this if you all don't cooperate. I just can't. Want to be fair. I hear you. We understand. And I hope that you know that each one of us here, we read it all, we hear it all, and we try to be fair in making the decision. So please use the time, use it wisely. I know it's not a lot of time, but it's all the time we have tonight. Mr. Biederman.
Good evening. Asher Biederman, 9050 Kildare in Skokie. Over the last 17 years, my wife and I have adopted two wonderful dogs, both through the assistance of CARE. After learning that the city wanted more information on the screening procedures followed by CARE in its adoptions, I listened to the audio of the February 18th subcommittee meeting, all 2 hours of it. I was surprised since my wife and I had nothing but positive feelings when adopting our dogs. I didn't hear any thank yous or commendations, just baseless criticism. However, what really upset me after listening to the audio of the subcommittee meeting came at the end of the meeting. Instead of appreciating the good work of this organization, it seemed that the subcommittee members were preoccupied with CARE's bank account. Since adopting our first dog in 1996, my wife and I have made numerous contributions, charitable contributions to CARE. My checks were always made payable to CARE. I knew it was a 501c3 volunteer charitable organization. I would drop my check off, I would receive a paper receipt from a volunteer, and each year I would deduct all contributions that I would make, just like I'm doing right now with my tax return. My checks were not made payable to the city of Evanston, nor were they intended to be received by the city of Evanston or to be included in the general revenues of the city of Evanston. Any effort by the city to now claim any contributions to CARE that I've made over the last 20 years and say they were really intended for Evanston is an insult to me and to others who contribute to CARE. I know the difference between a charity and a municipality. Further, any effort by the city to audit any contributions made to CARE by my neighbors and me is not acceptable because it jeopardizes the tax deduction of all contributors. I made my contributions to the charity that helped us adopt our dogs, and not to the city that now insults the contributors and slanders the volunteers of a fine animal rescue. This should be about the animals, and it's not. It's about the money. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Thank you. Mrs. Scott, Linda Scott, I think is the next speaker.
So tired. 2 minutes, oh my. This is the fourth session I've attended on this. One little point, squeeze her in. The police department's involvement. I had spoken to the chief, let's see, the first session of the subcommittee, and I said, you didn't say anything. He said, I will next time. He sat in the back. The acting deputy, I won't name his name, apparently is away out of town on some long training. The police department, of course, as we know, has oversight of this. I've had some bad experiences and friends who have as well. Real quickly, a couple of panhandlers. I'm sure some of you noticed them at major stores along Chicago Avenue and Sherman. We're bringing kittens along as a draw, as a bait for donations. When I reported it, I told the chief at one of the meetings, I was laughed at by the desk sergeant, like, who cares kind of attitude. Anyway, broader point, it indicates a certain lack of sensitivity and communication, I believe. It took hours and days. Finally, that was corrected. Other people had complained as well. Anyway, the police department, not a peep out of them. And secondly, a lot of people I know and most of my friends have close ties to their beloved animals as well. I've done fostering for many years and adoption, are extremely apprehensive about a potential closure of the shelter. And I didn't know what to tell them. I just don't know what to say. The other point is I do agree some points made in the subcommittee as to a certain smug resistance to change.
We'll have to ask you.
An adaptation to change.
Great.
We'd appreciate that.
Thank you. Kristen Callis, am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yes, you are.
Okay, great.
I'll be quick to make up for some of the other time.
Thank you.
My name is Kristen Callis. I am a Third Ward resident and a 3-year dog volunteer at CARE, as well as a financial donor. And I am here to say to you, my primary reason for coming forth is the welfare of the cats and dogs. And I think that that's something we can all agree on here. So when voting for the recommendation that's before you, if in fact that's what we're going to do, I'm now a little confused about that. But for each of you, if you vote yes to that recommendation, what you're saying is that you are confident that the city has a plan in place to replace the services that CARE provides for both the cats and the dogs within the time frame that's in that recommendation. So in the written recommendation itself does not address how the city plans to achieve that. So I would just ask you all, when you vote to approve that, to make sure that you're confident that you can give the animals, the city can give the animals the high quality of care that they are getting today from the CARE volunteer organization made up of hundreds of people and 25 years of experience. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Patricia Thrash, I think it is, Karen Williams, Ann Malo, and Eric, I think it's CHRUSCLEL. That's what it looks like. Any of it sound familiar?
My name is Patricia Thrash. I'm a longtime resident of Evanston and a longtime volunteer for CARE. I think much that has been said is very important for you to consider. The most important thing that I have been concerned about is the civility of this committee as it has proceeded. I cannot believe that this city is even contemplating closing a shelter without investigating anything but the charges of euthanasia, which really need to be clarified. I could say much more, but I really feel constrained to stop and listen to what others have to say. I hope you will consider what we are saying to you very, very seriously. The cats and dogs' lives are at stake. We care. We have shown we care. The volunteers will be without a job they love, and you will be without a shelter that does very, very good work. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Karen Williams.
Hi, I'm Karen Williams. I emailed a couple of you, Alderman Burrus. I'm in your ward. I'm a little over a 3-year CARE volunteer on the cat side, and I can definitely tell you that I have a lot of concerns, especially on the cat side, and the complete disregard for it. And so some of these are just questions, and what I have to say is we currently have 25 to 30 cats, and kitten season is coming up.
I mean, the word transparency has been used, and where is the transparency regarding the future of our cats? I want to know who will provide daily care for our cats, who will be in charge and directing that, who will pay for their medical care, because cats and kittens frequently need immediate medical care when they come to us within a day or two, not when if you're planning for rescue or whatever it is, not days later. And to be honest with you, every year our cat side hears a complaint from the city that our cat litter is being wasted. And my question is, if the city's complaining about the litter year after year, and in kind of a very negative way, by the way, how will they respond to the cost of medical bills for our cats? And I know that, Secondhand Snoots, I'm sure that they do, great work, but they were the only one at our subcommittee meeting, and I see 3 cats on their website, but we have 25 to 30, on an ongoing basis. So again, I don't know what the plan is for them. And I know that there was a mention of trap neuter return program, which actually we have been doing, but it hasn't really been supported by the city. But so if you mention trap neuter return program for our feral cats, who's going to go actually out to the residents and work with them? Because I've done 2 cases myself since our dear Curse Irwin had passed away, and it takes some work, phone calls, meeting with the people, and everything like that. Also, will there be someone following up with the rescues as to the final outcome of each animal? Or are we going to assume that everything went well and all that other stuff? Where and how long has the animal been there? And to make sure that each goes to a forever home. Right. So that's it.
All right, thank you. You did in 2 minutes, too. Thank you. Ann Mello, okay.
Thank you, Alderman Holmes. I'm here because I started with the Evanston Animal Shelter in 1988, and I brought an award with me that thanks me for a donation of 8 years as volunteer counselor, medical director, and friend of care for the Evanston Animal Shelter, signed by Linda Gelb. What I would like to say is, in those 8 years that I was there, I always worked with Linda Teckler. I found that she always supported care. And what I would like to propose, given what I have heard here, that the situation we are in now is not unlike the one when there was a transition from Friends of the Evanston Animal Shelter to care. And when Friends of the Evanston Animal Shelter was turned over to care, the volunteers continued just as they had been doing. There was a new president elected. This was Linda Gelb, and everything went on just as it always has been. My proposal is that the care organization, the volunteers, remain as they are. And because there has been so much conflict between the current board of directors and president, that there simply be a new change that comes about there, and that the city and care continue to work together with care, working for the Evanston Animal Shelter. Thank you.
Thank you. Aaron Crucial? Oh, I'm sorry, okay. And Kristen Carson, you want to get ready, and Emma Smith and Sue Hodges. No.
Sorry, I'll be real.
No, you come on, but I'm just telling them to get ready.
I used to be a volunteer and on the board of care many years ago. I moved out of town, and due to some health reasons, I had to step back. When I came back, the current leadership of care was very negative to me coming back. I've heard a lot of talk about the city not being civil, the animal warden not being civil to care. It goes both ways. Just point that out. I hope that care and the Evanston Animal Shelter can work something out, but I also think that the city really does need to look at the leadership of care, how it's treated the current animal warden, and make sure that everybody's above board and transparent, all those big government words that everybody uses, because it is wrong to say that a 501c3 can't be audited. Any 501c3 should always be able to be audited, and it needs to make sure everything is being run right. So that's all I want to say.
All right, thank you. Kristen Carson.
Hello, my name is Kirsten Carlson. I'm a certified dog trainer and a former volunteer at CARE. I'm a Chicago resident. I attended both of the previous subcommittee meetings, and I want to thank Alderman Tendam and Judy Fisk for doing such a thorough job. I think they did a really great job of really researching this issue and going out and checking out what other shelters are doing. I don't think that they just had some kind of personal agenda, as some people are saying. They really did their homework on this. Some of the issues that continue to seem to be brought up again and again are the cat side of this, and the cat side of this wasn't the issue in the first place. So I think that's why we're not talking about that. We're talking about the euthanasias here and the money, which I wasn't as concerned about going into this. But what I got particularly upset about was that there is so much of it, and my experience with the shelter is the dogs weren't seeing that money for needs that they had, medical needs or lack of beds. I have seen dogs there for months without a bed, without a soft place to lay down and go to sleep. That to me is just, it's cruel and unacceptable. Lack of enrichment program. I could go on and on about all the problems that were there, and it's not so much about the problems, but the lack of willingness to find solutions to these problems. I can understand euthanasias if there's no resources available or if there's a lack of space, but a lack of will to save the dogs, that I find very unacceptable. And I would really urge you to consider really looking at that and what we can do to move forward and solve some of these problems. So thank you.
Ms. Carson, would you mind stating your address? And I'm saying this only because everyone else has written theirs, but
okay,
from yours
it's
down.
2325 West Farwell Avenue. It's Chicago.
Okay, Barlow.
Farwell.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Emma Smith.
So my name is Emma Garl-Smith, and I live at 1607 Dobson Street in Evanston, 8th Ward. I'm a volunteer at the Evanston Animal Shelter. As a dog volunteer, my focus is on the health and well-being of the animals. Family and friends have expressed outrage at the details that have emerged through the Human Services Committee and subcommittee meetings. A friend and fellow Evanstonian recently learned of the issues as well and is with me here today to show that she is ready to volunteer for both the dogs and cats if that's what the shelter calls for. I have communicated with many people who are willing to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Hodges.
Hello, my name's Susan Hodges. I live at 3333 Grant Street in Evanston. I have been a care volunteer for approximately 3 years, and as a member of the Tuesday night shift, where much of this discussion started because we saw things that we felt were unconscionable, I want to say that none of this conflict or discussion has had anything to do with enmity against certain people. It has been care and concern about the dogs. We saw dogs being euthanized and we didn't understand it. No one set out to say care is terrible, the people in care need to be put down, need to be stripped from power. That is not how this came about. And the concern about the money, that came much later as that was discussed. But my point is that none of this comes from any ill will, any need to say that an organization that has put 25 years of service into this is absolutely wrong. I do think some things have happened and people have become perhaps misguided, or they have not kept up with the times, and some of the things that they believe perhaps are no longer really sensible and not common practice. So the main thing I'm here to say is that We have never taken a stance of wanting ill will. We have simply cared about the dogs, and I, as a dog volunteer, will be happy to care for cats as well as dogs anytime. Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Joyce Borsatti, is it BORSOTTI? Okay. All right, thank you. I appreciate that. Edwina Cornell, I believe it is. No? Karen Strauss. Okay. Isn't that Edwina? Is that Edwina Cornell? Does that look like Cornell? Cornell? Could you state your address, please, as well?
Sure. My name is Karen Strauss. I'm a 20-year resident of Evanston. I've lived those 20 years in Judy Fisk's ward at 1616 Hinman. I've also been a volunteer with CARE for 14 years. And I understand there's been some talk about possibly presenting CARE with a plan for change and allowing CARE more time. I just want to say that I already did that, or at least already tried. On February 18th, when the subcommittee voted to sever ties with CARE, I thought about it, and on February 19th, I wrote a letter. I wrote a letter, an open letter to the board. I also CC'd every member of the committee. Judy Fisk actually wrote me back, which I appreciate. And in my letter, I had a plan for change. The first two and most important changes were, first, no tests. No more failed or passed dogs. Since CARE was out of the business of recommending who was going to live or die, there was just no reason to continue with pass-fail tests. Two, all dogs. The CARE should take responsibility for all dogs at the shelter and abandon its recently adopted distinction of CARE dogs or adoptable dogs, but take responsibility for the welfare of every animal in the shelter. Then there were two changes that I thought that the board could make immediately. Because, you see, I wrote my letter on February 19th, and the volunteer appreciation dinner was February 22nd, and we were already scheduled to do elections. So I said, third, we should immediately impose term limits, that any board member who had been there 4 terms or more, that's 4, okay, 4 terms or more, should resign, and we should elect new members to replace them. And wasn't it convenient that we already had an upcoming volunteer dinner and election? And fourth, the fourth change that I suggested is that we have new evaluators, that the 3 current dog evaluators should all resign and allow themselves to be replaced by new people. My letter was acknowledged not only by Judy Fisk, but also by the president of the CARE board, and I felt very hopeful going to the dinner on February 22nd.
Can I ask you to begin to wrap it up, please, because your time is up.
And at the dinner, another volunteer asked whether, in light of what had happened, did CARE intend to make any changes to its evaluation, testing, or adoption policies, and the board said no. Okay? So my letter, my proposal, my changes of, gee, if you want to stay in Evanston, these are the changes we need to make, and we need to make them now. No response to that.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to try Edwina again. Could it be Caldwell? Oh, okay, she doesn't want to speak. Okay, thank you. Vicki, I believe it's Pasenko. Pasenko. Huh? And Alicia Kaplan those will be our last two speakers.
Hi, my name is Vicki Pasenko. I live in Chicago at 503 West Oakdale. I've been a care volunteer at the Evanston Animal Shelter for 7 years. I was a member of the subcommittee that met, and I just have one very brief thing to say. Since the subcommittee meetings, there have been rumors with the volunteers flying around. I think you guys have seen some. We're certainly getting a lot of rumors. There's a lot of concern from people who want to stay that are hearing that the city's going to sell the shelter, we're going to close the shelter, the cats are going to be kicked out, all of these rumors. So I would just ask that you guys, whatever you do tonight, help squelch those rumors so people can feel more comfortable. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you. Alicia?
My name is Elisa Kaplan. I live in Judy Fisk's ward. You can write my address in later. To some of you who came to this recently, it might look like this process has moved quickly, but it's actually been going on for a very long time. Several of us have been talking to members of the care leadership about these issues for more than 2 years. The city has been talking to them about these issues for a year. We've had 2 professional reports on shelter operations, a committee meeting in which dozens of people from the community spoke about their experiences, and 2 subcommittee meetings. Every issue has been discussed over and over again. Throughout this process, the care leadership has fought efforts to make changes. It opposed the warden's efforts to rehome dogs it wanted euthanized. It has announced repeatedly, after both the ASPCA and Triptow reports, that it would not make changes to its behavior evaluation and adoption processes. Even after both reports, it used the exact same process to evaluate and request the euthanasia of dogs who are now doing well in homes. The leadership has publicly disparaged rescues that have saved Evanston dogs instead of celebrating the fact that they have been saved. How are they going to work with rescues when that is their approach? We all wanted to believe that change was possible. There was a brief period last year where the care leadership appeared to be making some changes. Then they went back to how they were doing things before, requesting the euthanasia of some 3 dogs in 1 week. We are afraid that this is what would happen as soon as the pressure were off, but neither the city nor we personally can keep the pressure on forever, nor should we have to. A rescue is supposed to do everything in its power to save animals, not fight every effort to do so. With all of this going on and all this need for change, CARE held elections last week and did not put any leadership positions up for election. In addition, the election structure ensures that the board handpicks its own members by selecting a nominating committee that in turn selects a single candidate for each position. How is this process going to result in any kind of meaningful change within the organization? The care leadership long ago announced that it did not want to stay with the city of Evanston. It called the city the vice that kept it from moving forward. It is time for both parties to move on for the good of the community and the animals. Thank you.
Thank you. That's our last speaker. Yes.
When I came in, it was before the meeting began, and this list was out there. My name's on it before the meeting began. I don't know who was in charge of bringing this forward, but I just went and grabbed it.
I think that's the guest list, not the speakers list.
Well, I asked whoever the gentleman was standing up there if that was the speaker list, and he told me yes. So.
Okay, and where are you on this list?
I'm right here.
Frank? Oh, Cheryl?
Am I pointing to the right name?
Okay, well, Cheryl, we're going to go ahead and let you speak because you're on here, okay?
Okay.
You're on here as well?
I mean, I guess it'd be interesting to know what it means, guests. Is that like?
Well, here, this is a guest list, and this is a sign-in sheet.
Okay, well, that wasn't out there, and I was here before the meeting began.
Well, this was taken up as we began. She went out and got that for us to begin the meeting. So I'll let these 2 people speak. What's your name? Oh, yeah, I saw you when you walked in. Okay. Okay. All right, go ahead.
Thank you very much. My name is Cheryl Ferraro, and it's my first year anniversary being a care volunteer just this week. I had sent a letter. I think hopefully everyone received a letter that I sent regarding my feelings about the subcommittee meetings that I listened to. In fact, I'll just try to go over this quickly. I'm also going to submit my letters as part of the record.
And you did email that, and we did. I know I received it. Yes, I think the rest of the committee did receive it as well. So we do have it.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if it's part of your procedure that people that are not involved in a specific subcommittee, but on your Human Services Committee, do you all listen to those?
Well, thank you for bringing that to our attention. I know I've listened.
Okay, good.
I think the whole committee now has, if not all of it, but some of it.
Well, that's wonderful. I do want to say that I was able to attend the initial meeting, and when it was suggested that there was a necessity for a subcommittee for discussion, hopefully for coming to agreement and working out the problems. And I just want you to know that not only did I come to the first meeting, I also watched the first meeting again. Oftentimes you miss stuff when you're sitting in a room, all the distractions. And I was a little disappointed because I didn't really realize that the subcommittees were open. But I think it afforded me the opportunity just to sit and really listen. And before I really made my comments to everyone, I listened again because I wanted to make sure, that I was being objective. And I really feel that, CARE was presented with a list of things that were being asked, we need to work on this, can we improve that? And on the second meeting, they went through the item by item. And I was hearing the spirit of wanting to make things work. And just to close up quickly, the gist of what my letter was about was that, at the end of the meeting on the 18th, I heard, the alderman was summing things up and saying that, in his words, and that he felt that there was an unwillingness on the part of CARE to, move towards cooperation. And I frankly did not hear that. And then the other thing that further disturbs me about this whole subcommittee thing was then the discussion went on to, discuss the future of CARE and will you agree to, look after the animals in this interim, as if we had not come to this meeting or even taken it to the city council. And as a resident, and not only a CARE volunteer, so this sometimes I don't do so well publicly speaking, but I really object to that. And that is why and I've worked really hard. I haven't, in fact, I've asked for, input from the leadership. And I've, now that it's done and over with, I realize I had to find, my own conclusions, and I'm asking everybody to find theirs too. So thank you.
Thank you.
Yvette Jordan Granberry, 809 Brummel Street, 30-year Evanston resident and a 5-year CARE volunteer. I'd like to go on record on behalf of the volunteers who participated in the subcommittee meetings that I'm truly concerned about how these meetings were conducted and at the recommendation that the committee has come to. To begin, the ground rules for these meetings were never presented up front. When we were invited to participate in the subcommittee meeting, which was stated to have a limited number of participants, not until a few days before that first meeting was held were we made aware that this would be an open meeting, that participants beyond the speakers from CARE, the volunteers who've raised these concerns, and the 2 aldermanic representatives would be present. What we thought would be some semblance of an open forum amongst the specified group and a negotiation of what the city wanted the shelter to be and how CARE might meet those needs did not happen. Instead, it came across as a series of accusations and attacks on numerous procedures and was very one-sided. We were not aware until the second meeting that the meetings would be audio taped. Now, granted, many of us don't necessarily come to city meetings or civic meetings, but don't know the procedure, whether it's being audio taped or whether minutes are being taken. But shouldn't that have been known up front in a subcommittee meeting? We did not know also that a vote of the participants at the table would be taken, and that would determine the recommendation of the subcommittee to the full Human Services Committee. Knowing that there were 3 volunteers who were clearly against the current operations, we would have had to have a preponderance of evidence to sway the aldermanic participants in our direction. I'm further disturbed at the recommendation of the committee. Alderman Tendem felt that we were defensive. It would be difficult to come across as anything but defensive when we were placed in a position by that second meeting to respond to a series of concerns raised by Alderman Fisk and then questioned on every response with others added. We thought this was going to be a discussion for us to come to some common ground. We have been said to be unwilling to change. Yet the organization has modified a great deal of our procedures over the past few years, in part due to some of these issues that have been raised, and we stated so. And we were willing to do more based on the discussions and requests, yet we were marked as unwilling to cooperate. The comments have been made that we are using the facilities of the city, but we want things run our way. What no one seems to acknowledge is that CARE has taken on much of the day-to-day operations of the running of the shelter.
Can you
based on,
again,
yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank
based
you.
on those standard operating procedures that the city has created and have been under the oversight of the city's employee, the warden, all of this time. No disrespect intended, but what have the wardens been doing for over 25 years, and what responsibility do they have in all that has gone on? CARE's reputation has been sullied in the process of all of this, yet the city seems to want to place the entire onus on us, who are operating in your facility, but under your procedures. So now that the city is challenged by these procedures, they essentially throw CARE under the bus. You have 2.5 employees there daily. Where has the city been all this time? Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, those were our last speakers. Just for clarification, it certainly was recommended at our last meeting that we have the subcommittee, which I certainly voted for because I thought it was a good idea, and I thought that with both sides, because there's certainly clearly two sides, and with input from our alderman, that we might be able to come up with some kind of recommendations for a solution. But I want to be real clear. It was always that would come back to this committee, and then this committee will make a recommendation to the city council. And so for all the rumors out there, until that happens, it ain't over. Nothing is happening. So for those people who think it's being sold, for those people who think all that, none of that is true. It just isn't. So I just want to be real clear about that. So regardless to what happens tonight, there still is a whole another level that this would have to go through before a final decision would be made, okay? So just sort of keep that in mind as we talk tonight. Now the question tonight, of course, is that there was a subcommittee, and there was a recommendation from that subcommittee, and I'm looking for, I see no lights. Are there any comments, any recommendations? Alderman Grover.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have listened to most of the second subcommittee meeting and want to thank Alderman Fisk and Alderman Tendem, the city staff, the shelter staff, the volunteers for all their work on this. And I do agree it's been a long community deliberation on how to manage and how to address the operations at the animal shelter under CARE's auspices. And it occurs to me that the committee's deliberations turned out differently than I think I had intended. I think Alderman Tendem expressed at the beginning of the second meeting, which was the purpose of the subcommittee, was to determine if CARE and the shelter can work together and under what terms. And in my mind, that means a really thorough discussion of our expectations for what those terms are, our expectations for CARE's operations and shelter's operations, and how, really more specifically, we would revise the policies and procedures for assessing animals and animal adoptions, and then incorporate those suggestions into a draft agreement and then submit it to CARE for approval or rejection. I can't make any conclusions myself about CARE's unwillingness to do anything until they've been presented with specific expectations and embodied in specific terms in an agreement, and I don't think we're there yet. we do have a lot of good information from the professional reports, and we have a lot of good information from those discussions about what we would be looking for and what kind of operations we would want to run at the shelter. We have best practices, standards of care that I don't think are reflected in the agreement that we've been operating under right now. So what I'd like to see is I'd like to see us revise a proposed agreement with CARE and incorporate everything that we want to see happen at the shelter and with the shelters and CARE's operations, which would include, clearly, improved record keeping, working with rescue groups. I'm showing you that I listened to the meeting. Moving dogs out of shelter as soon as possible, keeping them out of cages as long as possible, exerting less control over the adoption process, lowering the euthanasia rates, considering including a rescue group as a presence at the shelter, better training for volunteers, more opportunities for adoption visits, screening procedures, best practices, accounting, reporting, all of that. The agreement, whatever agreement we have now and whatever agreement that CARE has submitted, I don't think addresses much of that. And if that's what's important to us, that's what we ought to put into an agreement with CARE. And if CARE then at that point decides that those aren't terms under which they want to operate, then let them walk away from the agreement. But I think it is precipitous of us at this point to terminate a relationship with CARE when we don't really understand what they're willing to do. They haven't been presented with anything in black and white that allows them to present to their board, to evaluate and make an educated, reasonable decision about what's going to work for CARE. Not colored by accusations about past practices or what has seemed to me to be in difficult personal dynamics, but I think we need to give CARE our best proposal for how we want the shelter to operate. And by the way, if CARE decides that these aren't terms that they want to agree to, I think the agreement that we craft has to apply to anybody who comes into our shelter. If we're trying to achieve best practices for how to handle animal operations, then it ought to work for whoever the successor to CARE is, and not just be specific to CARE. If we're talking about a wholesale change in culture at the shelter, then it ought to be that for everyone. And just as an aside, it does seem to me, having listened in and been on, admittedly, the sidelines of this discussion, that the CARE Board of Directors also is getting in its own way in some ways, and perhaps CARE can address some of the ways in which they have handicapped themselves in this discussion and consider some changes in leadership so that we can move forward in this discussion rather than look back all the time.
Absolutely.
So my proposal would be to...
Can you hold your proposal?
Yes, sure.
Just hold your proposal for a few minutes, and let's hear from the rest of the folk, and then come back to that. Alderman Burrus, and then Alderman Fisk.
Well, a lot of what I have to say is very similar to what Alderman Grover just said, but I'll put it on the record anyway. I believe our relationship with CARE is actually an example of a not-for-profit partnership with the city that has worked well for many years. But that does not mean that the agreements should not be revisited. And clearly we do need to revisit our agreement with CARE. I do have concerns about the lack of leadership change on the CARE board. I've heard this over and over again and through the subcommittee notes as well. I find it suspect any time an organization has the same leadership for many, many terms. That doesn't leave opportunity to innovate or to grow. And that's not good for an organization, and I'm not sure that's what we want to be partners with an organization that's not willing to change in any way. So obviously, CARE's done amazing work. I want to continue that relationship, but under a different agreement and under different circumstances. And the board, as Alderman Grover said, needs to look within itself. Maybe there's time for new leadership. There's many volunteers here who are passionate. Give them the opportunity to lead. That is a way that an organization remains sustainable.
Okay, Alderman Fisk?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to jump around here a little bit, but I want to touch on a few subjects. I don't disagree with the looking forward. I think I just have a different view on how we look forward. In the past several weeks, several things have happened since these discussions have been going on well over a year. I think it was in the early part of probably April or May of 2012 when the issue of euthanizations came before us, again, generated in the 8th Ward, and a fabulous response from a resident of the 8th Ward working with her alderman. What that did was bring to our attention the number of euthanizations that were going on at the shelter. Before that, I don't think any of us on the council had any idea that that was happening. The percentages are astounding, troubling. That's now almost 2 years ago. And for the past year, we've been talking to CARE. The committee meeting started with a subcommittee of Alderman Rainey, myself, the mayor, the city manager, the police chief, and the CARE board. We had 3 meetings scheduled with them. They canceled one, sent their attorneys instead. We talked about these issues. Basically, there was a stalemate. At the end of those meetings, the decision was made, because there was a stalemate, to move it on to the Human Services Committee, where it came. And most of you were probably at that meeting. Based on that, a subcommittee was formed, and we've had 2 meetings of the subcommittee where we've asked questions about basically what are you willing to do to change, to increase transparency, share your records with the city of Evanston, reduce the number of animals that you recommend for euthanization, reduce the amount of time that animals spend in the shelter, reach out to rescue groups, better train your volunteers, stop depending on outdated and discredited temperament testing that the reports indicated were being interpreted incorrectly, resulting in the recommendation to euthanize dogs. I mean, all of this is serious. All of this has been in front of the CARE board now for a year. And I think that's one of the reasons why Alderman Tendam and I were so serious at the subcommittee meeting that something needed to be done. During that time, CARE had any opportunity to come and tell us of the changes that they've been making. Instead, we've just had more resistance. This week we asked, I think the police chief asked for records to be released to the police department of all animals that came through CARE since 2010. Initially, the president of CARE agreed to that. Just this week, we heard that no, the attorney didn't, their attorney was not going to let them do that. This is a week ago. This is since the subcommittee. This is no indication that there's a willingness to be open and transparent and a partner with the city, and I'm very concerned about that. We have the highest euthanasia rate almost in the entire metropolitan area. Even Chicago Animal Care and Control is less than we are. There's something terribly wrong here. And I don't feel that it is appropriate for us to continue with an organization that so far is willing to make token improvements. Yes, we'll put some dogs out on the internet. Working with rescue groups is much different than that. Working with rescue groups, there are thousands and hundreds of thousands of dogs out there that rescue groups have to reach out to other organizations to make the case to advocate for those dogs to get them placed in foster care and get them adopted. That takes people who are totally committed to animal welfare. That's not what's happening at the shelter right now. The fact that dogs are failed and then once they're failed, they get no enrichment, no beds, no nothing. They're taken out. We were told no enrichment. If that's not true, then please let me know that's not true at another meeting that's coming up. We were told by the CARE folks, no enrichment. Okay, you don't have to answer. You don't have to answer from the audience. On a visit to the Anti-Cruelty Society, I was thrilled to see, and I did not have any positive impression of the Anti-Cruelty Society before I went. When I came out of the Anti-Cruelty Society, we saw dogs with beds, we saw dogs with thunder shirts, we saw dogs that had, where their records were open and available to everyone, where people obviously had taken some time and expense with the animals. That's what I expect to see here. I expect to see that happening in our shelter. And that's not what I'm hearing. That's not what I'm seeing. And until you can tell us how you're going to reduce that euthanasia rate, whether it's to allow another rescue group to come into the shelter and work alongside care, if that can happen, maybe we turn the dogs over to another rescue group and care continues with the cats, because from what I hear, they've been doing a fairly good job with the cats. Maybe that's one of the things that we look at. But what's happening right now, people in Evanston, is that a group of volunteers stepped forward to save these dogs, over 20 dogs in a year and a half that have been recommended for euthanasia, and volunteers, a small group of volunteers, step forward, and out of their pockets, they've been paying for these dogs to get the medical care, health care that they need, have been working with rescue organizations to get them placed, and have been very successful with that with the animal warden. That's what CARE should be doing, and I don't know why they're not.
Okay, Alderman Brathwaite, then Burrus, and then Tindem.
Thank you, Alderman Holmes, and thank you to all the volunteers who have come out this evening. I own a pet, so I understand the conversation, and I'm curious to know how my dog would actually go through your evaluation, and I'd be willing to put my pet up for an evaluation, granted if it was videotaped, just to better help me understand your policies and procedures. Alderman Holmes, Alderman Tindem, Alderman Fisk, thank you also for your willingness to join the subcommittee. Just based on some of the conversations that I've heard, I've definitely walked away with some lessons and things to pay attention the next time we send an issue to subcommittee. Alderman Burrus, I agree with you also. I think there's some things that need tweaking and should be in place. I'm not sure if getting rid of CARE is the right solution. I am very concerned about the board. When I look at everyone out here in the audience, I still see you as one organization that's in need of a little bit of support and direction. And so, Alderman Burrus, Alderman Grover, I'm going to turn to you and listen to your recommendations. So many things that were said, and I don't know if you've been keeping notes. The things that I want to highlight, I do think should be time for an election. I think that the questions that were presented by Alderman Fisk and Alderman Tindem should be answered. I also think that there should be a time limit on, or maybe a goal that we put in front of the task to get back with some reasonable, decent time frame. And during that time frame, I think it should be clear to the current CARE board that no animals will be euthanized during that period. And I hope that that would be acceptable to Alderman Fisk and Alderman Tindem while that draft agreement is being prepared. And I think thank you for pointing that out. Thank you for pointing that out. And I think my one concern is that it sounds like there's a very small group. There's the board, and then there are people that support the board. And I would hate to know that we would have to go out and find another entity because of some bad practices by a few board members and those that support them. So those are my thoughts and concerns. Right.
Alderman Burrus.
One of the CARE board members brought up a really good point that I forgot to mention in my last comments, was we've not heard from animal warden. And it is the city's responsibility. The recommendation goes to the animal warden, and that's a city employee. And so we have control over this. This is not, we could immediately say no. CARE can continue. I believe we need changes. I believe the board leadership needs to change, so don't take my comments wrong. But we have a responsibility. We could have made those changes to say, we're not going to listen to CARE's recommendation. We're going to do something else with the animals versus euthanize them. So we can make those changes at the next council meeting or 2 council meetings. We can do whatever we want because the animal warden has to listen to our policies. But we've heard nothing from the animal warden. Zero. Nothing from the police chief, as far as I know, or very little. Nothing. So it would be nice to hear from the animal warden what is going on. And I've had issues over, as everyone knows, with the dangerous dog ordinance and other issues with what goes on with the animal warden. So I think we have an opportunity.
Okay, Linda Teckler, Chief Animal Warden for the Evanston Animal Shelter. Basically, what was going on is CARE implied to me that they were certified in the behavior evaluations. I assumed that they knew what they were doing, and after the Claude incident, I realized that I should have been paying attention a little more than I was.
Again, we, the city manager, the police chief, can say, stop euthanizing dogs, and it's the end of the story.
And
right, I know, but what I'm saying is there's no reason why we're like putting all the blame on CARE. We need to take some of the blame as well.
Keep turning your lights on. I see them. I have you all written down. So don't keep turning your lights on.
Good evening. This is a long and complex matter that has taken several interesting turns along the way. One of the basis of the relationship that has existed with CARE is they have been the evaluators of the dogs forever. And once again, when an issue came to our attention, we intervened to cease the euthanasia rate. But please understand, this whole system has been built on somebody has to evaluate the dog. Now, what at the center of this controversy is CARE's unwillingness to modify that evaluation. And to emphasize some points that have been made throughout the course of this discussion, there has been more than ample time for them to say they would. They've gotten more than ample of advice to say they should. And it seems from my sitting through the meetings where I didn't want to talk because it was a matter to be worked out between the elected officials and the CARE board of what direction it would go, there seems an unwillingness to deviate from the current path that they're on. Consequently, when CARE volunteers came to us and said there was a problem, we looked into it, and yes, we did that. We did stop the euthanasia rates. The animal warden, the chief animal warden, did reach out to rescues and modify all those things. And so it's not that we're here to say it's their fault because CARE does an equally good job saying it's our fault. The issue is, what are we going to do from here on out? And one of my concerns is there's a lot of bruised egos that go back a long way, and I don't know that the relationship is repairable. I'm not the money guy. I'm not good at 501c3s. I don't know those things. But operationally, the chief animal warden and her helpers, and there's a core of volunteers that can maintain operations. If we do suspend our relationship with CARE, there'll be an immediate uptick in the costs that CARE has borne for the spay and neutering. That's going to happen. That's unavoidable. But I think that from where I was sitting, it was inappropriate for us to weigh in. This was a matter between the city council and CARE.
Can I just follow up? Why didn't we take responsibility a long time ago to do the evaluations and train our animal warden and helpers to do the evaluations instead of relying on CARE? That's my frustration in this is there have a lot of volunteers that are walking the dogs, taking care of the dogs. And sorry, I'm a dog person. I'm allergic to cats, but cats as well. But why were we allowing another party to do that when we could have been doing that? What was the animal warden, the chief animal warden, and the other animal warden people doing? I mean, as you know, I have issues with the animal warden to begin with, but now we're saying, well, CARE told us to do it, so we did it? Well, if they CARE told us to jump off a bridge, would we? I don't think so.
Probably not, but the issue is, if you look at the relationship between these two entities, CARE is the adoption guys. CARE is the evaluator of animals to determine if they are adoptable. We're the dog catchers. We're the kennel maintainers. We're the guys who show up with the kitty litter and cat food. Okay, and so it's two totally different functions that have been bifurcated long before I got here. And so we had grown dependent on their evaluations. And frankly, they were the adoption agency. They were making the call whether they were going to adopt a dog or not. For us to run a separate evaluation and adoption thing would have been kind of silly to coexist. Now, there was a problem discovered. We've cobbled together a solution while we await a decision, but this is something that has been going on for a very, very long time.
Okay, Alderman Tindem, you're next up.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This has been really difficult to listen to after having more in-depth conversations during our various discussions. I wasn't privileged to a lot of those. I did not actually get involved in this discussion until the special committee was set up. So I wasn't privileged to the information that was discussed in prior meetings over the past year and a half, almost 2 years. But I got up to speed pretty quickly. In addition to that, I really educated myself to just understand what are best practices in shelter care, and to really understand what it is that we are comparing ourselves to. What are the possibilities? What can a forward-thinking community like Evanston expect from an animal care shelter provider? And it's a lot. It's a big thing. We don't seem to be doing much of any of it. You asked the question, why didn't we take over? When we took over the euthanization, the stopping of the euthanization, then what? You know, it's obvious what happened. A group of CARE didn't want the dogs. We didn't need 20 dogs hanging around the police station. A group of volunteers at CARE stepped in and created the network, the safety net that was was transferring them out, was putting the foster homes, eventual adoption. You know, we call those the lucky 20. And that's a lot of dogs in a pretty short period of time, a year and a half or so, to be rescued. They did it at their own expense of time and money because CARE did not want to have any responsibility, either time-wise, volunteer-wise, financially, for these lost dogs. And that, to me, is unacceptable. I think that I guess I expected at the least that CARE was a more comprehensive organization. And that's what I found out wasn't true. It's not that they aren't a comprehensive organization. They don't want to be. There was a statement in the second committee meeting that really sort of turned the tide for me, and it was the suggestion that we could actually run two operations out of the shelter. One would be CARE, and they would act sort of like PAWS in Chicago, which takes in pretty much only the dogs they can save. That the dogs not just save, but send out pretty immediately to good homes. And that's a really nice job if you can get it. I don't think you're going to find that job here in Evanston, because I think the community wants a more comprehensive. We want to take care of not just the sweet little dogs that can be sent right out, but we want to take care of all of them. And there obviously will be cases where dogs have to be put down for various reasons, medical and behavior. But to not go the extra distance to find out and to filter through and find out who these dogs are, we're not doing our job. that idea of two groups, that then somebody would be stuck with the only task of, I suppose, picking up the dogs that are police rescued from the shelter, which is a bizarre concept to start with, and creating another group that would somehow deal with these dogs. I mean, that's like all work and no play. Part of this is there are a lot of joys, I think, in volunteering and working with a shelter, but there's also some downsides. You sort of have to take the good with the bad. An organization that thinks that one group can handle all the good stuff and the other would be stuck with all the dogs that are borderline or, in their opinion, borderline salvageable. I just don't know how many people are going to step up to that task. So I think it's a very unreasonable solution. I think it's a very unreasonable expectation. And that was the point in the committee where I really believed, more than anything, that this just had no future. And that point came just before a break. I did call for a break at that point. I had to go out and really try to make sure I heard what I thought I heard. And that was very decisive. So at that point, it was for me, the question had been answered, can we work together? And that was no. So I really do believe that Alderman Fisk and I conducted a very open meeting. We exhausted the audience and everyone else with questions. I don't know that anything, there were heated moments, there were exchanges that weren't good, but I think you have to put that in the context of a group of people who are very passionate about pets, their cats, their dogs, whatever. I expect there is going to be some passion and heated moments because we're not talking about art, we're not talking about, other things. We're talking about very, very personal friends of ours, these animals. So I fully stand by the recommendation that I made along with Alderman Fisk and the rest of the committee and would hope that you would send that on to council. If not, I ask what's the next step? Who is going to come up to speed and ask the appropriate questions of care to prolong this, what I see as an inevitably failed relationship, like the chief said. I do believe it's contaminated, and I don't think there's enough willpower or enough really on either side to decontaminate and to start fresh. I don't think, given what I've seen, that that's possible. So I would ask the committee, what next? If we don't approve this, then where do we go?
Alderman Fisk.
Thank you, Mark. I think one of the things that we might consider doing is, if the committee wanted to be forward-thinking and look outward, is to either do an RFP for partners that might want to come into the shelter, and that could include care. And we, as part of our RFP, we could say, we want this, we want this, we want this. We want working with rescues, we want demonstrated working with rescues, we want the low euthanasia, we want transparency and partnership, we want, whatever list of things we come up with that we want. I don't think that at this point, given everything that has been said and done and the demonstrated history, that it serves us to limit ourselves in that way to one organization. And so that would be something that I could support. If we do an RFP and think of it that way, then we can invite other rescue groups to come in and partner with us. I will go back to Waukegan and again use their model when they made a change from being a high-kill organization or municipality and lowered their euthanasia rate down to less than 4%. They invited rescues from 5 states to come in and say, what can you do to help us? We want to place our dogs. These are good dogs, 400 dogs a year, mostly pit bulls and chihuahuas. What can you do to help us? And they brought all of these folks in and they partner with all of these people working with the police department. Now, that may not be the model that we want to use, but there are people out there doing fabulous work now. that CARE is not doing. And maybe a little bit of competition with an RFP would be the thing that would say to CARE, come on, take a look at what other organizations are doing, how effective they're being in saving animals' lives, and get on the boat and participate and come up with your concept, and we'll look at all of them. I think that would be something that I could support going forward with CARE as the sole organization. Right now, I couldn't support, but this is an opportunity that we have to really state what our vision for that shelter is, and it's an opportunity that we should, again, if we're going to be forward-thinking, we should take advantage of. I'm sorry, can I just ask the chief one question, because it was something I think needed to be maybe emphasized. Chief, during this time, I mean, let's just say that we decide to do an RFP and we're doing that. Is the police department ready to, with volunteers, to take over the operation of the shelter?
We are. We've anticipated that based on the recommendation of the subcommittee, we have reached out to a number of the volunteers and asked them if they would stay and help us if there was a parting of the ways with CARE. And also CARE committed at the subcommittee meeting until it was official they would also stay and assist us. But we have, that's what we do for a living. When something's not going well, you call us. And we're schooled at this, we can make it work. Both Linda Teckler and David Rolls realized that there would be additional responsibilities fall to them in managing part of the volunteer operations, but we have reviewed those contingencies with the animal wardens, and we've anticipated that situation.
Mm-hmm. And all of the animals would remain at the shelter. There wouldn't be, I mean, you could conduct adoptions with the help of the volunteers. You're not going to clear the animals out of the shelter. Everyone will be taken care of and fed and walked and played with. And
no, there will be no mass escapes. But I think that we would continue to utilize the relationships that the chief animal warden has built with other pet rescues to try and move the animals out that way. They're good at it. They know what they're doing. We've already established those relationships, and we that would be our default position. And at the same time, we would begin to train in-house for behavior evaluations with volunteers and city staff. So we would, at some point in time, be able to conduct those evaluations.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, Alderman Grover, you're next on the list, and I'm going to give you the last word because I know you have a recommendation. However, I do want to say something before that, and that is that through this whole process and listening, and I'm thinking over the last, I want to go all the way back to 2007, actually. I've been here just that long to have gone through a lot of processes, and I remember how excited we were going to get new stuff, and of course, the market drop and all that happened. I just have not heard, and I'm troubled by this. I'm really troubled by it. I cannot understand how CARE, which I believe began right here in Evanston, had this long working relationship, and all of this comes up, and I don't hear the passion to want to stay and work with Evanston, and I just don't get that. What piece am I missing? What am I not hearing? Or maybe it's not there. And if it's not there, I think we need to hear that. And maybe that's going to be a part of what Alderman Grover is going to recommend. But it's a piece that's missing from me as a person who's worked in human services for many, many years. There's just pieces that you look for. And I know that feelings sometimes get in the way, personalities certainly get in the way. We all understand that. But if we're all concerned about the animals and wanting to continue to have a shelter that certainly is dealing, and let me say this, and I hate to say it, but I told Mark I wouldn't say it publicly, but I am going to say it publicly. I'm not a pet person. I don't own pets. I'm just not. I'm really not a pet person. And when I say that, it's because I don't own a pet, and I've just never been a pet person. But I do understand what is needed. So I don't have a dog in the hunt, but at all. But I would really like to know, how can you just walk away from good relationships and 25 years of service? I just don't understand that without a fight. I really don't get that. So or without trying to show us the kinds of changes that, can be made. I think that I think people listening to the tape hear different things. I have to say, Alderman Tindem, I too was troubled by, I was trying to think, how could you have two organizations? I didn't get that. That didn't set well with me, in terms of having one group do one thing and one do another. The other thing is that I just don't know where we can, the list of 18 items, 12 items, I can't remember, that Alderman Fisk had, and I thought I heard you all going item by item by item, trying to answer those. I really did, but that was just beginning of a conversation of things that Alderman Fisk had. That was not necessarily the whole pot and whole pie. And I just hope we don't get caught up on just personalities and what is coming from, individuals on this. So Alderman Grover.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It seems, just listening to the committee discussion, that I'm not sure that we even have a vision of what we want our shelter to do and how we want it to operate. And it confounds me how we could expect CARE to read our minds that we don't even know. My motion is that we receive the subcommittee's report and that we direct city staff to draft an agreement with CARE, because right now they are the game in town, that we draft an agreement to optimize our shelter operations and those extraordinary volunteer resources at CARE, and that we are explicit and specific about our expectations for how the shelter should be operated, tapping into what best practices are in the industry, incorporating and proposing that into the agreement itself. And then if CARE decides that they don't have the resources or the will or the commitment to the shelter or to the specifics in this agreement, then CARE can, as I suggested, can walk away. And if CARE decides otherwise, that this agreement is for them, that they can operate under these terms, then we've got a 25-year history of a organization operating within our shelter, taking care of our cats and dogs, but under terms that we all want and agree to. And so just to recap, I move that we receive the subcommittee report and that we direct city staff to draft an agreement regarding shelter operations with CARE.
Okay. Is there a second? Well, yeah, we'll move in second and then we'll have discussion, because I see a light. I have a light from Alderman Fisk. It's been second. Alderman Fisk?
Alderman Grover, I think there might be some confusion there, and what I think the best next step for the committee to do is to put together not its agreement with CARE, but its vision for the shelter, and leave that space blank so that we can present that to any number of organizations. My concern is that we try to get the best possible partnership in place, and that doesn't preclude CARE from responding to it. But it does preclude other very well qualified rescue organizations from participating in the discussion. And I think going forward, We need to have that discussion. Otherwise, we're not going anywhere. We're just sort of stirring the pot a little bit, but we're not going anywhere. So, again, as a progressive community, as a community who's so far behind the pack in this, I would just suggest that we as a committee work on that, work on what our vision is, work on what the shelter, we want the shelter to be, and then decide who we're going to go out to, but not decide it tonight at this moment.
Alderman Brathwaite, then Grover, and then Tindem.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm a little bit puzzled, only because I think even if we get a new organization, you're going to be looking at the same faces. I could be wrong. And so I see in front of us just a group of residents who really care about animals. I think, Alderman Grover, the only thing that I would ask that you edit, and a lot of it has to do with some of the comments that we heard before, is just to include new elections and remove the current leadership. I definitely agree with Alderman Burrus. It's time. I think any normal, healthy organization changes their board limits, whether it's 2 to 4 years. I think that should be part of your request. And I truly believe that there is, within this room, the leadership that can incorporate all of the suggestions and recommendations that were made this evening to move this organization forward. So if you are willing to restate or take that as a friendly amendment, I will support it. But under the current leadership, if we're waiting for the current leadership to take your instructions and recommendations, I would have to agree with Alderman Fisk and Alderman Tindem that I don't think they have the capacity to do that.
Alderman Brathwaite, I may be wrong, and maybe our legal counsel will chime in here, but I don't think that is within our purview to tell them what to do with their board. I don't think we can do that. Now, what I hear Alderman Grover trying to do, and what I would like to see us do, is I want to clean up our mess with CARE first before we move on. And if we have to do, I hear what Alderman Fisk is saying, and you're absolutely right, and we can do the vision and all of that. But I think we have to clear up first what this relationship, if it's over, you know, cry, whatever, and walk away if we have to. But I just want to make sure that it's over first. And I don't know that we know that it's over yet. At least I don't.
It sounds like we're penalizing the organization just based on the actions of the board.
Well, but we have no control over the board, I don't think. Can you weigh in?
The board.
Chairman Holmes, members of the committee, grant for our corporation council. We can make the request of the organization. We can make the request that they enact an amendment to the bylaws. We could request a date certain, a time certain, that they come back to us with either an amended composition of the board or a negative response to the request. We can make the request. But it's a matter of their bylaws, and it's whether they want to take the action or not.
Right. Okay. Alderman Grover, then Tindem. Oh, go ahead, Tindem.
Actually, I don't have a lot to add to that. I just I'm getting a little lost in the debate at this point. I'm concerned that the very people that you're asking to set make a list of these requests are the very people that you're not listening to now. I have invested a lot of time in this. I came in honestly without any anticipated or expectations about CARE. So I don't know what is going to help us turn that corner to do this objectively. If you can do that, fine. I don't support dragging this process out for months and months. If you can manage to get a commitment from their board of certain basics that we cited in our requests, in our criticisms, fine. Just that'd be kind of like the short answer. Can you do these things? Can you tell us within a very short amount of time? But to belabor this, to have more meetings and keep doing this is a disservice to the community, to the tens, hundreds of volunteers that actually want to get back to taking care of animals. That's all they want to do. And to a community that wants a good, solid shelter they can trust. So we do so many things in this council that just seem to be dragged out for the sake of whatever, a few comments here or there that we're not comfortable with. I've had overwhelming comments from both my residents of the 6th Ward, but of the entire city, saying that they were so thrilled we're on this track, a fast track, compared to other things we've done at City Hall. But it's not to say that it hasn't been given a lot of thought and attention. So I don't know where this is going, and I'm kind of disappointed. I'd like to know. I'd like to leave here with a more positive note.
I would like to leave here with an answer, but I don't know if that's going to happen. Alderman Fisk?
Alderman Grover, I guess I'm going to ask you again. Let's leave things as they are. If you want to talk about what those goals are, let's talk about them. I think the questions that we asked the CARE Board at the first subcommittee meeting, the responses were given at the second subcommittee meeting, were, I think Alderman Tendem and I felt they were generally not responsive, at least not to the level that would rise to the vision for the shelter that we've even discussed, here this evening. I don't mind doing that, but I absolutely agree with Alderman Tendem. This is something that is being highly watched in the community. I think there's huge concern in the community about this. I think we need to be a little bit more proactive in searching out answers. It's fine if we issue questions to CARE and have them come back at our next Human Services Committee and ask for responses to them, ask them how they're going to change after this meeting tonight, and they've heard the concerns or some concerns, how they would change, and so the rest of you can hear that. Alderman Tendem and I have heard all of that, but I do think it would be helpful for the rest of you to hear that. But going forward with CARE right now, with the leadership that's in place, is, I think, a big mistake. I want the volunteers to know that I understand their love for the animals, and I understand their pride in the time and effort that they have made on behalf of the animals. They will always be welcome at the shelter, but I think right now limiting us without asking those questions first and just preparing an agreement with CARE is really not the way to go. And I don't think it's going to be well received in the community.
Alderman Fisk, are you referring to any other meeting other than those two audio, the 12th and the 18th? Because are those the two meetings that you're referring to?
Those are the two
that you and Alderman Tendem heard?
Those are the two meetings that I'm referring to now. There were the previous 3 meetings as well.
Oh, no, I understand those. We all heard those, but I was just wondering if there was something else that I had missed. Okay, Alderman Breathwaite?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And I'm looking at the time, and I realize that it's getting late, and we've had an opportunity to hear from both sides. And I see the president of CARE that's been sitting back there very quiet. I'm just asking you maybe to come forward and give us some understanding of what you're thinking, and where do you see the current board's direction right now?
If I may.
Hold on, I'm sorry.
But everybody's asked me questions. I haven't had a chance to respond yet. And
I would like to hear from the president of the organization. I'm crystal clear on the direction that you're going, and it's been asked over and over, what is your response to some of the comments? I just want to hear if you have any feedback, any thoughts.
And I kind of think better questions are, instead of how will you change, will you do this, will you do that, and be specific.
If she says no, she says no.
All right.
I'm just asking, do you have any feedback to some of the discussion, public comments, and questions that you've heard this evening? Do you mind coming to the microphone, please?
I've heard I'm sorry, name and address.
Linda Gelb, 3836 Holland, Skokie. I don't know how to answer your question right now because I sit with a board of 10 other people and we make decisions together on what we do. We don't do anything quickly at CARE. It's taken us 25 years to get to where we are today in our caring for the animals and our processes. We look at things very carefully. We judge how they fit in with the community, and we try to implement, looking at everything, all the information that we have. We are a very passionate group of people. I have tried to keep my volunteers quiet. I have not wanted them to be disrespectful. We have never tried to be disrespectful to the city of Evanston or to its community. We have always looked at the community as where we want to place our animals and our best animals. I've heard so many different things tonight. It's gone from being the euthanasias of animals to now replacing the board of care. We don't know what you want. Bottom line is we don't know what you want. When we were told to stop euthanizing animals, that was fine. It was great. We asked that a waiver of liability be filled out on each one before they went out. We have educated people doing the evaluations. An evaluation has to be done before a dog is turned out into the public. Modifying it, we have modified them. We have changed some of the standards. The dogs that we are putting out now are not the same dogs that we would put out 3-4 years ago. So we are taking the recommendations seriously. But CARE doesn't do anything fast. We need to look at this and see if it is really how our philosophy can go along with it. I would be mortified if one of our dogs hurt somebody out into the public, that we placed in the public, that we adopted out. We adopt out a lot of pit bulls, and we try to make sure that they are ambassadors of the breed, really, really good dogs. So we don't hear in the news that one of CARE's dogs, injured somebody. I don't know what else you want me to say. We don't have a clear vision of what the city wants at this point in time, outside of not euthanizing anymore and changing the board and better training for our volunteers. Our volunteers are very well trained. I'm not sure if you're talking about the volunteers or about the evaluators when you say better training for volunteers. So I really have no other comments at this point in time. I have held my volunteers back. Let me tell you that. I've held them back from everything that they've wanted to say, but we are a very passionate group, and we do have the best interests of the city of Evanston at heart. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
You wanted to say something?
I just want to ask Ms. Gelb a question, and because it's something that has been mentioned and I've not really understood. Why was the reference to the city of Evanston apparently removed from your bylaws and on your website? And you no longer say Evanston Animal Shelter. You say things like we're working out of a municipal animal shelter. And did you remove the name of Evanston from your bylaws? But have you removed the reference to Evanston from your bylaws? That was one of the things that someone mentioned, and I just want to find out whether that's true or not.
We're expanding to talk about the North Shore, not specifically Evanston. We had a vision of trying to help more communities.
We'll come to the mic.
Can you come, if you don't mind, would you come to the mic because we are recording for our residents?
We have been trying to rebrand for the last 3 years. We have a broader vision. We have asked many times to be able to work with other communities around the North Shore, and that is the direction that we are headed. We are trying to get the name out to more areas as a resource.
Can you explain to me a little bit how that would work? Would that mean that your organization would have a presence at other municipal animal shelters, or how would you?
When we first started talking at our town hall meetings, we talked about having another satellite place, always being at the Evanston Animal Shelter, but having a place outside of Evanston.
So you would have your own separate facility,
our own
where
separate
you
facility
operated
outside of
from.
Evanston, so that we could help others. Since we're only allowed to take from within Evanston, we feel that there are other suburbs that could use some assistance, and we were looking to help other.
So I guess I don't understand why you would remove reference to the city of Evanston.
Because we're not exclusively the city of Evanston's. We are an independent organization. We want to be able to operate a little bit more independently than what we have been.
Was the plan to bring dogs to the Evanston Animal Shelter from your other
No.
facility? Okay.
The other facility was going to be where we would take in dogs from other, actually private parties who can't take care of their animals anymore, and do adoptions from there.
I'm asking because you started out as Friends of the Evanston Animal Shelter.
That's not when I was there.
And well, I'm just saying that this is, for people who've lived in Evanston, this is the evolution that they've seen as Friends of the Evanston Animal Shelter, and then Care for the Evanston Animal Shelter. And now you're just Care with no mention of Evanston.
Now we're Community Animal Rescue Effort.
With no mention of Evanston.
Right.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you.
Alderman Brathwaite?
I'm sorry, just two real quick questions, and then I really would like to get to Alderman Grover's proposal. Random question, just how often do you meet with all of your volunteers?
We've
On
been
an annual
having more
basis?
town halls lately. We've been meeting between 3 and 4 times a year.
That's it?
With all the volunteers, yes.
Okay. And then my follow-up question to that, out of your 10 years of your board members, what's the average length of term, starting with yourself?
I've been president for 23 years.
Okay.
Okay, Alderman Grover, now we're back to you.
All right, I'm good. I told you I'm good.
Thank you. I can't even remember now what the questions were. I don't think that we can dictate how CARE's Board of Directors act, but I am fairly certain that the Board of Directors and the elected officers and the members of CARE have gotten the message tonight about what might be required for CARE to be a full partner with the City of Evanston and at the animal shelter. I don't know if it's fair to ask them, how are you going to change? How are you going to change? I think it's only right to ask them, will you do this and will you do that, and be very specific about what our expectations are. And we're not there yet. So my proposal is to incorporate all of this, all of our specific expectations and specific requirements for operations at the animal shelter and CARE's involvement to be spelled out in a way that hasn't been before in a draft agreement for CARE. And I would direct then the city manager to identify staff who can help him do this and present it to us with some haste, do this with some dispatch, so that CARE has some resolution, so that they know what they're looking at and what our expectations are, and so that we can move forward and address, as the alderman who served in the subcommittee suggests, significant concerns in the community, and I agree there are. So, again, to reiterate, I move that we receive it's already been seconded. The motion is to receive the subcommittee report and direct city staff to draft an agreement for shelter operations, and that we hold that part in committee for this committee to review.
Yes, I think you're right about time period. I'm wondering, Alderman Grover, and based upon the report, actually CARE had their own done. That was pretty much the same as the report I think that the chief had done, and those things that and best practices were in there.
Those are some of the resources that will come to bear as to what we're looking for in an agreement with CARE, or and if CARE declines to undertake an agreement with us, whatever CARE's successor organization would be.
Right. And could we ask the city manager as a part of this to get that done and maybe sent to us electronically so that by the next Human Services Committee meeting, we will have had a chance to look at that? And now that would be the April.
5 weeks from now. Yeah.
By 5 weeks from now, yeah.
All right.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, certainly I think we would need to make it a public document. We would have a serial meeting if we were circulating the document and taking comments, I would think. So as long as we were to make it public, Mr. Corporation Counsel, I think we would get around that issue.
We could transmit it and expressly notice the meeting to take comment, consider, review. But if the request is to certainly, I mean, it's analogous to putting it into the packet before any council meeting.
No, I'm talking about the next Human Services Committee meeting,
right,
which would be April. That we would have at least had it way before then to look at it, get feedback. It could be, I'm not trying to keep it from the public. I'm just simply saying to take care of the timing on it so that we don't have to go for 2 or 3 months without.
Well, what we could do is we could make it available to you and members of the public. We could then take comments, and then we could have a red line version then that's available again for. Alderman Holmes is requesting that we would circulate a draft, get your comments, and be able to address those comments when the committee met next. And I've been asking the Corporation Counsel to help me through the open meetings law how we could do that. I think what we could do is if we circulated an initial draft, had comments from the committee, we could then gather those comments up and then recirculate a second draft for the meeting. Will that work, Mr. Corporation Counsel?
The timing issue is going to be problematic in terms of the forum for receiving comments, contemporaneousness of the communications. The problem is if a comment is solicited and received from an individual committee member and then that comment is then commented upon, then you build the chain of contemporaneous communication, which constitutes an ongoing dialogue for purposes of the Open Meetings Act.
Okay. So what we could do perhaps, Madam Chair, is we could have an intermediate meeting. We could get it out to you. We could have a special meeting of this committee for the sole purpose of providing feedback, have that in an open forum, and then have a new draft ready for your regular meeting in April, if you'd like to do that.
So could we have then a special meeting before?
Well, as you know, there's 5 Mondays in the month of March. And and the Rules Committee earlier this evening talked about a council meeting on the 31st.
Could we then maybe do a Rules Committee meeting before and look at that?
You could do a Human Services meeting.
I'm not rules. I'm sorry. It's after 10. I don't function too well after 10.
So perhaps a 6 o'clock meeting on the 31st with the council following at 7, and then have the regular meeting the following week of this committee to make any final changes.
If that could work, then at least I'm just trying to not drag it on because I hear Alderman Tindem's concern, and I'm certainly the volunteers and everything would like to have this over with. So if we could do that, that would be helpful. If that's okay? Alderman Fitz, are you comfortable with that?
I'm not going to vote for it, but I hear what you're saying.
Okay, it's okay. It's okay. All right, well, Alderman Grover, would you include that? No, just include that in.
Yes. So my motion, all of what I said before, to include then consideration of at least a first draft of this agreement at a special Human Services Committee meeting on Monday, March 31st.
With the only agenda item being this.
With this being the only agenda item for further consideration then at our meeting, regular meeting in April, which would be a week later on the 7th.
Okay.
Except that second meeting is during spring break. Our April meeting is during spring break.
How many people will be away during spring break?
Just me.
Will you? Are you the only one? Will you be here? Yeah. You take. He's taking the dogs away, so, okay. So we won't even have a quorum then, will we? Oh, you're
Alderman
joking.
Tennant's
Oh, okay.
joking.
Sorry.
It's Monday, April 7th. Alderman Burrus and I will not be here. It is.
Well, 4 of us will be here, so that will be a quorum. Okay. And we can get your feedback.
All right.
Before. Okay.
Absolutely. So that's the motion.
Okay, that's the motion. It's been moved and second. All in favor?
Aye.
See, you want to oppose? No. So 2 noes and 4 yeses. Alderman Braithwaite.
Can I make a referral to staff, Madam Chair, that also we include WALLY? One quick second, sir. I don't know when the deadline is for a non-for-profit, but I'm assuming that it's coming up shortly.
The deadline for what?
For non-for-profit filings. They have to file their federal taxes, right? Or state taxes, at least.
I would imagine the April 15th deadline would occur. I know that Mr. Farrar is attempting to get some additional information from the state of Illinois.
April 15th, subject to a request for an extension like anyone else.
Okay. Is it possible within that time period just to have the organization submit their tax returns and that we do an internal audit?
We can certainly ask. Would you like just the tax return from 13 or other years?
The 990? I'll open it up to
The 990 is publicly available.
Okay.
Well, it may not be.
Sure.
It's probably 2012s, not 2013s, though.
Okay, so can we ask for 2012s and ask for the most recent bank statements for their operating account? Is that reasonable? I'm looking to... Are you a board member, sir? Oh, you're an attorney. Okay. Well, there you have it.
So we'll be happy to ask, but I think you may have heard your answer.
Okay.
Alderman Braithwaite, if I may be heard on that.
Thank you, sir.
Those documents are subject to public inspection under the Internal Revenue Code. So, I mean, we can make the request. If they want to deny it, then that's something that's not called for under the applicable publications of the IRS.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, that completes our agenda for tonight. Those of you who are interested, we'll be back here on the 31st of March at 6 o'clock for a special Human Services Committee meeting. And No. This will, council meetings, so we'll only have 1 hour, and we would hope to do what we can do because we have a special council meeting at 7 p.m. And then we'll be back again on the 7th after the Rules Committee, which will be 7:30 on the 7th of April for our regular Human Services Committee meeting. Alderman Fisk.
I'm sorry, are we adjourned already?
No, we didn't.
Okay.
I was just moving to do that.
Alderman Braithwaite's motion raised a thought that I have. Could we also find out from the volunteers, and I'm from the animal warden who's been working with volunteers, how much has been spent on placing the failed dogs as well? I think that would help inform us by our next meeting as well.
To find out what?
Well, there's been money, not city money, spent on the failed dogs. I would like to know how much has been spent.
Who's been spending?
The volunteers out of their own pocket, I think, have been spending it. And I'd like to know how much that is, if they'd be willing to share that information. Can I ask the city manager to find that out as well?
So you need a representative from the volunteers to...
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, is there a motion to adjourn?
Move to adjourn. Second.
Okay, we are adjourned.